All right, dude. I'm really fucking excited to have you here. I'm dead serious. I kind of was beating myself up when I saw that you messaged or you posted something on a comment on the first episode with Nate, and then I was like, how did I not think of him? I was scrolling through my brain of like, who have I met over my life that's been like, I don't know, it doesn't have to be like one thing or the other, but like motivational, outgoing, like, has a story to tell. You probably could have been a good guest even long before you lived your life before high school.
Yeah.
But I'll start quickly by introducing my friend, Mike Fumagalli. Mike, thank you for traveling here from the north suburbs now, huh?
Yeah, western suburbs, Batavia. Yeah.
So, beautiful up there.
Yeah, beautiful this time of year.
Hey, beer people love it. The craft beer nerds like myself.
We got some great spots there in Batavia. Sturdy Shelter.
Penrose. I love Penrose,
yeah.
What's that, Hardware out there?
Yep,
Isn't that in the area?
Yeah, that's out on...
Big hop farm.
They grow everything on site.
Yeah,
it's a pretty impressive place.
Crazy charcuterie boards.
Yeah.
The thing I'm even more psyched about is that you were like, I don't want to tell you this, but I like seltzers the most. Like, White Claws, me and you, like
Cheers.
You couldn't have spoken better words to me. I'm like, I'm fucking in. That's perfect on a Monday night recording session.
I love it. Cheers.
Well, I mean, again, I keep doing this at the beginning of these. You're only the fourth episode I've recorded. I've got 2 out as of today. And I just want to keep reminding people that this is just a show that I want people to experience some of these people that I've met over my years and people that have a great story and can tell a great story.
Sure.
That's a big thing for me. And eventually I just want this podcast to end up being like this reference, like this kind of like that guest came on and then he was like, well, you should meet my friend such and such. And so right now is like that base layer. It's like, I just happen to luckily know you from our days in high school. Mike is a year older than me, if I'm correct, in high school. So you graduated 01.
Yep.
Yeah, right?
Yeah,
okay.
01.
I mean, I met you freshman year, most likely.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you were playing football. I was the guy with the shirt off, painting his face and stuff, yelling about you playing football.
Yeah, that's right.
Those were good times.
They were, man.
Nick McClanahan.
Yeah.
I used to wear his number on my chest for like homecoming. Yeah.
He was a monster in the middle.
I mean, you always had a way about you of like being positive. Like you always struck me as like, that's the youngest human teenage coach I could have ever met. Like you have that like really cool young coach vibe to you for some reason. But I think, God, we reconnected at one point years ago. I think you needed a camera or something for wrestling.
We did.
Ended up meeting like Bolingbrook or something. Didn't we? Right?
Yeah, we did. I remember that now. Yeah, for sure. I was coaching wrestling at the time.
I remembered you as a wrestler. Like so I always like really was like, this dude's tough as nails. And you're not like 6'10", like
no.
you're small and strong as shit, right? That's always been your MO.
Good things come in small packages.
Damn right. Damn right. I mean, as a fellow not that tall guy, man, we need inspiration. We need people like you out there.
Wrestling was always one of those things that was like it leveled the playing field for everybody, right? Because you were competing against guys that were more or less your same size, and it's a sport that's for everyone. And it's been growing, especially women's wrestling's been growing across the country and across the globe. It's been impactful, certainly it was impactful for me. And, I'd like to hope that I made an impact on some young people over the years too.
Well, because you eventually grow up to be I don't want to put you in one hole, but like, in the realm of education, like you're obviously around kids, just making sure, giving futures and direction. I mean, you've had multiple positions since graduation, I'm sure.
I was, so I taught, what was interesting was I had such a great experience coaching high school wrestling in Iowa City, kind of as I closed out grad school there. And
Dude,
I was like, man, I really want
to privilege is that to coach in Iowa, coach wrestling.
Oh, it's insane.
Iowa.
Yeah. I mean, like
you're God.
The state. Yeah. I mean, the schools, get dismissed to go to the state tournament. That's crazy. I mean, it's like,
what a storyline that whole era of wrestling.
Incredible. I mean, I had the privilege of being around some really talented kids at that period of time that, were icons in Iowa high school wrestling and still are to this day, But it's a different level there, man.
It's a culture.
It
right,
is.
Man?
Yeah. It's what you do. in Iowa you wrestle.
Now wait a minute, if I'm not mistaken, I'm assuming your son is named after.
He is. Yeah. He's named after Dan Gable, and
the greatest,
right? Yeah, the greatest ever, the GOAT.
So I do remember after college you went to University of Iowa for your undergrad, right?
Yeah.
Did you say you finished at Iowa State for
No,
masters?
I finished. I did a grad degree at Iowa, and it was specifically.
Okay, so you stayed at Iowa. You weren't, stupid cyclone.
No. The once I decided that I really wanted to dedicate I couldn't just coach wrestling full time. That wasn't a real job,
No.
Like now these guys, I mean, a lot of these guys run in really elite level clubs, that's their career, but at the time I really just wanted to coach wrestling and had to figure out a way to do it. And I was like, well, I could be a teacher, and I could, I was interested really in teaching anything. I would have taught math or social studies or PE, but my undergraduate degree was in a sports medicine field. And so I had all this background in science. And so I was like, well, what could I, take the least number of classes and be certified to be a teacher in front of kids,
The least number of, you weren't looking for the easy way.
No, but I was like, so I pursued a master's degree in education for people that specifically didn't have undergrad degrees in education. So it was a master's in the art of teaching and science education, but none of us had undergrad degrees in an education field. So
I didn't even know that existed.
Yeah, I didn't either at the time.
I learned something
Yeah,
today.
there you go. I didn't either at the time. So I had a lot of background, anatomy and phys, biology, cell biology, all kinds of things that gave me the ability to teach high school. So I took 2 years of grad school to learn how to be a teacher, and then found myself in a science classroom.
That's wild. Like, to think that you're like, I got to figure out a way to coach wrestling without just coaching wrestling.
Yeah.
Because that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
It just wasn't sustainable. You had to have a family and a life and all that stuff. You're like, we got to figure out a way to get paid to do this.
Yeah, and insurance and all those kinds of things.
That too. Yeah.
But so I started teaching and honestly fell in love with it. It was far exceeded all of my expectations. I really went into education to be a coach, to be around young people and have an influence and a positive impact on them. And then I saw this other opportunity to do that same thing, but through the classroom with lots and lots and lots of other students that were interested in sports or not interested in sports, and students that were, of all different races and ethnicities and heights and sizes. And, it was just, with wrestling, I pretty much dealt with one type of kid, right? Like, and so, it was an opportunity to really expand my impact, I think, on young people. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and so my classroom became, a platform for hopefully making some kids better people.
It's kind of crazy to think like that you went one to do the other, but then that one inspired you to kind of be like, wait a minute, I can apply some of these principles in the classroom.
100%.
And like
100%.
So it's just more like it's your general makeup. It's not really about just the wrestling. It's like part of just what you are, what you became. Can you talk about that a little bit? Like, how did that shape you? Like, when did mom and dad throw you in a singlet like the first time? Like, when did that kind of just pop for you? You're like, I love this.
5th grade was really a big turning point. My dad had wrestled a little bit in high school, but my parents were really good about encouraging us to do lots of different stuff, right? So like youth athletics also then is very different than it is now. And so like my brother and I played rec league soccer, and we played basketball at the YMCA, and we played different sports in different seasons. I ran cross country in junior high. I ran track. I wrestled. I played baseball. I did. And, that was a period of time in which you could really, really enjoy lots of different things at a recreational level. And, but then I had a different affinity for wrestling. And it just, it was really physical. Like I was probably by nature, I was a more aggressive kid.
Yeah.
And so
you owe that to. Why are you so aggressive?
Yeah. And so, it was just something I really took to. And then I had a ton of success real fast. And I think that was the thing that really hooked me was, I played
results.
Results. Absolutely. Right. Like results are addicting. And so I, played soccer for years, but, only ever scored a goal on a penalty kick. And I played baseball, but I hit, below average and was a pretty good player in the field, but I wasn't anything special there. And so I really got hooked on wrestling because that made me feel special in that space, And so I really, like, over the years, especially coaching, like, that was my main mission. And it didn't matter why I had somebody in front of me that I did, was that for some reason it was important to them that they were there, right? And I may, as their coach, never fully understand how important it is to that young person that they're there in front of me. And so that I think is really what it made me belong. It made me feel like I belonged. And so everything I did about coaching wrestling was about making kids feel like that was the place they were supposed to be. It didn't matter what else was happening in life. It didn't matter what was challenging you. Like, you were going to learn how to overcome challenges there. And because you belonged, and because you mattered to somebody, and because those are all those types of things, hopefully as you get older, right? We're in our, we're 40, right?
Yeah,
and so
look at us.
I mean, you
Drinking
think
White
about,
Claws.
right? Cheers. When you think about it, Joe, right? Like, if you named 5 people, you get into your later adult years and you ask somebody, name 5 people that have a really positive influence on your life. Outside of immediate family members, most people would name a teacher or a coach.
Yeah. Well, that checks out.
Would be somewhere in those 5, I would argue. And, I just, from a young person, I had tremendous coaches. I had people that spoke into my life in lots of different ways. And they used wrestling as a vehicle to do it. And so, or baseball or soccer or any of those kinds of things. But wrestling, I think, had the most impactful coaches for me. And I always just wanted to be that for somebody else,
So when you obviously played multiple sports like you're laying out, and I'm sure you stuck with some of those, even when you did kind of discover your kind of calling almost was in wrestling. So do you remember kind of different impacts that you felt like? What made wrestling that much more like? Is it more like the dedication, the dire consequences of not being good?
Oh yeah,
like the not preparing, and that, like, what kind of lessons did that kind of leak into you as you got older and started to kind of become like an uber functional human?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you a couple of stories that will kind of speak to that. I think the first thing for me was that, like, there's nowhere to hide, right? So it's you and somebody else. That's it. Like, if you're on a baseball team or a basketball team or a hockey team and you make a mistake out there, it's probably not super obvious to everyone unless you're really paying attention to every single kid at the same time, right? And when you win or lose in team sports, everybody wins or everybody loses, and so everybody else, kind of feels as bad as you do, I guess, right? In wrestling, it's you and that other guy. That's it. And so somebody's going to get their hand raised and somebody's not. And man, if you're the one not getting your hand raised over and over and over and over again, like, it's tough to keep coming back and back and back every day. Those were the kids I respected the most, man, was the kids that were coming back and
just putting
themselves through the level that we were training at on a daily basis. And the outcome didn't always match their effort, right? So we talked a lot about that. Was, you have to be satisfied with your effort, and even if the outcome doesn't end the way that you wanted it to, right? So if you focus on effort and not outcome, then more often than not, outcome takes care of itself, right? But if you are always just focused on the outcome and your effort never matters to you, then you're never going to be good enough, right? You're never going to be good enough for yourself. And so I think that was something really important that I learned young, is that, it's going to be me or it's going to be that other guy. And I'm going to do everything.
I want it to be me.
Yeah, I want it to be me, right? Because it's also embarrassing to lose in a one-on-one sport, right? Tennis, very similarly, right? Sports, individual sports, it's embarrassing to lose. And so I didn't want to lose. And so that was really motivating, and so
good building block there.
Yeah. Right. And so it kind of was about winning and losing, but it it wasn't as much about winning and losing as it was about just like avoiding the consequences of, trying to figure the sport out and get good at it, right?
Higher consequences.
Because it's different.
You don't want to get folded.
Listen, I started playing golf a few years ago, okay? And I shoot about 120, okay?
There's some miserable days out there.
Yeah, right? There's some days where I go and lose a lot of the small round white things, okay? And the consequences of learning a sport like golf are, just kind of like you're going to lose a dozen golf balls, right?
You're bummed out.
Yeah, it's disappointing. Yeah, then you go hang out with your friends and go home to your kids, and you're like, oh, okay.
That sucked today.
The consequences of learning to wrestle are very high, especially if you're competing against kids that have never done it before. So, when we talk about, lessons learned young that kind of carried into life later, that was a big lesson that I wanted to pass on to young people that were in my care was, things aren't going to go your way, but you just got to keep going. You got to figure it out. And so, and then that'll kind of bridge into another story I'll tell you, which will kind of speak to another aspect of my life and my adult years anyways. But, so I lost my late wife to cancer when she was 36 years old. It was, I can tell you more about that. We'll kind of go that direction if we need to or want to. But, and so there was like 1,500 people that came to the funeral. Okay.
Jesus.
She was diagnosed with colorectal cancer, and we lost her in less than a month. And, so Kirsten was a young, healthy, inspiring, person. And all of a sudden the world kind of became captivated by this really sad and tragic story. And so we had really high attendance at the funeral services. And so I felt very loved and very supported by everybody that was there, but all my wrestlers were there. And, before the service started, there was a line, a mile long to see me before the service and to see the boys. And so I stopped and I pulled all the kids together. I got a group of them. Somebody's got a photo somewhere of me kind of standing in the middle of these guys and all these guys standing around me. And I said, you got to pay attention and you can't miss this because this is what I've been talking about the whole time. Okay. At some point, your life is going to ask of you, what have you done to prepare for this moment? In the same way that we talked about wrestling. Every single day, every single practice, every morning workout, every late night workout, it prepared you to be able to answer the question on match day, what have you done to prepare for this moment? And I said, the reason is not because I expected every single one of you to win a state championship. The reason was never winning. It was never about the medals, the trophies, the conference championships, the regional championships, the state championships. It was never about that. It was about putting yourself through something that made you know that when life got real tough, that you were going to be capable of withstanding that. And I said, and that's what this moment is about for me. This is my moment. And I didn't know that moment was going to come when I was 34 years old, right? But it came.
You never expect it.
You don't. But it came. And when it came, I was able to persevere. And I was able to, we were carried by very loving family and friends and an entire community poured out for us. Our church family was really impactful at the time. And so there was an amazing outpouring of love and support, and I certainly didn't do it by myself, right? So it wasn't like, I found a way to figure this out and I did this and I did that. That wasn't it at all, right? Everyone did that. But at the end of the day, what I wanted to model for those young men and women was saying, hey, listen, like I don't know what your moment is going to be in your life. And quite frankly, none of us do. But because you have done what you've done, because you're a part of this, because you're a part of something that's bigger than you, and it is preparing you for the rest of your life when you don't even know it, a moment like this is going to come for you. And that was very impactful for them. And I still have, I have really good relationships with lots of my former wrestlers. I still talk to them pretty regularly. And they still talk about that moment, because that, in many ways, for a lot of them, like that was when, like, they got it. You know, that's when it kind of clicked for them, where they're like, oh, this is what he was talking about, you know?
It's also interesting, too, to think about where they were at in their lives at that moment. Obviously, you know where you were at in your life at that moment at 34 years old.
Sure.
And in her, you know, at 36 years old, going through this insane thing. But some of those kids, I'm guessing, varied in age. You know,
Oh, yeah.
Some of them you may have just recently coached, and some of you may have coached 10 years ago or
Sure.
whatever it was. It's like, so that might have maybe had a huge impact right off the bat. It might have been a slow burn for them, and then when they hit age 32 and they ran into something, they're like, this is what Coach Mike was talking about.
This is what he was talking about.
Bananas.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was inspired listening to
Well, I'm glad. That's I just wind me up and let me go, Joe.
and you know what, like, and forgive me if this, I don't think it will be for you, but maybe if, you know, if somebody's listening and they don't know the dynamic or anything, but like, this may sound insensitive of a question, but when you were talking about that day and, you know, that amount of people in a place like that coming to celebrate a life of somebody so important to you, it's like, how do you stand there in that line? Like, what's going through your head all day long? Like, what is it? Is it progress? Is it like one thing the whole time duration, or is it like I went in there and kind of knew, like as I see it now, even when it's grandma and grandpa or great grandparents, it's like sometimes I just look at that, whatever their daughter was in, you know, standing there and just receiving people for 3, 4, 5 hours, and you just like, what do you say to them as the person? What are they thinking? You know, that
of course.
Time? You know what I'm saying?
I would say, you know, first and foremost, I was so glad to see every single person that came. You know, they were, you know, Kirsten lived an inspirational life. I mean, that the number of people that came that day was a reflection of who she was as a person, right? And that's honestly, that's what was like, I was awestruck about you know, at the very beginning of the morning, was I was like, wow, like they're here to celebrate her life, not because they're, you know, just because they're a relative or just because they're a family friend or they're someone that, you know, there were people that were captivated by her story that we never knew. And they read it on social media. I mean, you talk about the impact of, you know, the positive impact of, you know, being able to tell stories, and it grabbed people's attention. And so there were people I met that day for the first time. Like, there were people I met that day for the first time. They never... And they said, like, hey, we read about this, and you know, we wanted to come and show our support for you, and that was interesting to me, because I was like, wow, this woman lived a life so compelling and so inspiring and so captivating that people that didn't even know her came to celebrate her life. Right.
So if we can tail back just slightly, it's like how did it kind of go? I mean, it sounded like everything happened fast, but But so, like, how did you guys approach it? You know, when you found out, was it immediately like they gave you some bad news, and then they said, to make it worse, it's not going to be a long, you know, it's not going to last a long time, and then so, like, how did you guys get the story out almost? Like,
so it was really, really quick. I mean, all of it just kind of went real fast. So,
like, from totally healthy, happy, or laughing and doing our Friday dinners and, you know, church on Sundays, and then all of a sudden, one doctor's appointment or a couple doctor's appointments later.
One.
Holy shit.
Oh, yeah. So, she had been telling me that she had some, like, abdominal pain, like, on her right side a little bit, but the way she described it, she called it a side stitch. Okay. So she was like, you know, I've had this side stitch lately, and she was feeling nauseous after she would eat. And I was like, that's kind of odd, you know, but like Maverick was 7 months old at the time. She had just had a baby. So like when you are seven,
that's your youngest?
Yeah.
That's your youngest.
Yes. Okay. That's the youngest. And so, like after you've had a baby, like things that are out of the ordinary with your body are not all that out of the ordinary per se, right? And so you're always kind of thinking about like, is this a post-pregnancy thing? Is this,
happy, healthy young lady? Just
yeah,
had a second baby.
Of course. Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Shannon complained pretty much every minute after having all the kids. It was always something. It was different. Obviously, you just got rearranged.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Like, I mean, bearing children is like a big thing for your body.
Yeah.
And so honestly, like we thought she might be pregnant again because she was having some of this nausea. And so, I was like, just go to the doctor, and figure it out. She's like, oh, it's not that bad. I don't feel like bad enough where I got to go to the doctor, I'm just, and she was just kind of telling me about it and it persisted. And, she's like, you know what, I'm going to go to the doctor. And so she went to the doctor on a Thursday. Gable had hockey practice that night. So I took him to hockey practice. Then, Kirsten went to the doctor. And when I got home from picking Gable up, she said, I said, hey, like, how did it go? And she's like, actually, they sent me over to the emergency room and I got a CAT scan and I have some spots on my liver they think might be cancer. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, I have a follow-up appointment tomorrow morning with a doctor. And I was like, all right, like what kind of doctor? And she's like, I don't know, here's this card. And she kind of chucked this card on the table and I picked it up and I was like, Kirsten, like, this guy's an oncologist. Yeah. Like, they must be pretty confident you have cancer if they schedule an appointment tomorrow morning with an oncologist. She's like, oh, I thought he was like a GI specialist or something. I was like, no, it says it's oncology. So we had an appointment at 10 o'clock the next morning. That was February 8th. The next morning was February 9th. And it was a snow day. We got like 16 inches of snow in like a 12-hour time period, and the kids were off of school. And so we asked the daycare provider, can we drop the boys off? We got a doctor's appointment to go to. Can we drop the boys off? And so we dropped them off. We showed up to the doctor's office an hour early. And this is kind of the theme to telling you all of this is like, when you're going through cancer treatment, the rate at which they move is pretty telling as to like if you have a good prognosis or a poor prognosis, right? So if things move really quickly, like you're probably in trouble. And if things are really slow and you're waiting for test results for like 4 days, 5 days, you're waiting to hear from a doctor for a week, like the chances are really high that you are in pretty good shape. So we showed up to the appointment an hour early. We walked into the office. We gave them Kirsten's name, and they said, we have a room for you. We walked into the room. We were sitting in the room 30 seconds, and the doctor came in and said, what do you know right now?
Were you in that mind state in the waiting room, like when you first got there? Were you like if they move quickly, I'm worried? No,
not at all.
It was
like
something
that
you learned.
Yeah, that was definitely something I learned. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, no, I was.
Sure you were having like spidey sense about it. Like,
no, not at all. Not at all. And honestly, like I still kind of going into it, I was thinking like, there might be a mistake, or she might have like some scar tissue on her liver for some unknown reason, or she might have gallstones, or she might, like in my head, I was thinking, I was like, this is not like, at no point ever was stage 4 metastatic colon cancer like in my head as being a possibility. So that, and we said, well, really nothing. She went to the emergency room last night. We know there's a CT and she has some spots on her liver. And he said, I'll show you the imaging. And he pulled up the imaging on the screen. And in my undergraduate time at Iowa, I was able to become familiar with imaging, MRI, CT imaging, x-rays, so I'm not a doctor, but generally speaking, when I look at something like that, I can tell what I'm looking at. And so he pulled it up on the screen and I knew exactly, like, I was so horrified. I started throwing up in the garbage can in the doctor's office. Jeez. And so I was like, I panicked, and here was Kirsten consoling me.
Yeah.
Like, here she is. Yeah. the stage 4 cancer patient. And she's like, hey, it's going to be okay, you know? And then I kind of like gathered myself and I was like, yeah, you know what? Like it is going to be okay. And we're going to figure this out. And it was alarming. But what they were trying to figure out at the moment was if the tumor was causing a bowel obstruction, because if the tumor is causing a bowel obstruction, the bowel obstruction was a bigger problem than the cancer was at that moment. Okay. And they needed to take care of that. So, they said, we got to really understand what we're dealing with, you know, so we're going to do a biopsy on Monday. We're going to do a PET scan on Tuesday. We're going to find out exactly what type of cancer we're dealing with so that we can inform kind of the infusion cycle. And then we also want to know where else cancer is so that we can figure that out. And then we'll have a plan by Wednesday of next week.
So how many days did that take for them to?
That was 5 days.
Wednesday. So 5 days.
So that was 5 days. And then on day 6, so day 5, they called us. Day 6, we went into the hospital. So we went into the doctor's office for a follow-up, and they said, we need to send you over to the hospital now because we need to remove the tumor. And then at that point, she was... You know, her liver was full of cancer. It was metastatic from the colon tumor. And so we realized that, you know, she was pretty gravely ill. And so they did a surgery to remove the colon tumor. And in the middle of the night, for some reason unknown to me, but like, you know, a nudging, and I woke up and I noticed her lips were blue. And I called the nurse, and the nurse came in and they like tested a few things real quick, and they were like, she's got to go to intensive care. This is like early hours of the morning. And so they rushed her to intensive care, and I was like, what's happening? And they're like, we have to intubate her. You have 30 seconds. And I was like, wait, like 30 seconds until what? And they're like, you have 30 seconds and this might be your last 30 seconds. And I was like, so think about that, right? Yeah. Like you got 30 seconds to talk to your spouse.
How do you prepare for that?
Yeah. And so, so I went in there and I talked to her, and they intubated her, and then she was in intensive care for 6 days after that. And then she came out, and her, like, it was crazy because they one of the numbers they were watching over the period of time was her bilirubin levels. So like, you remember when Walter Payton was, you know, toward the end when he was real sick. His eyes were really yellow with pigmentation, and his fingernails was yellow, right? That's jaundice. So that's from low liver function.
Yeah, if you had a baby, you know, you're always worried in the first days, you know.
Exactly. So so they were watching her bilirubin levels, and her bilirubin levels were climbing like off the charts, but she was getting better in like enough to get out of intensive care. So she was getting up and after she got the breathing tube out, she was walking up and down the hallway, and like the nurses and the doctors are like,
this shouldn't be happening. Type thing.
They're like, what is going on? And she just had that much fortitude. And so they put her into a step-down unit. They moved her down to the 3rd floor for a couple of days to really try and work on eating and getting her energy back up, and then moved her back up to a cancer unit to try and administer some chemotherapy. And so she was, you know, what was interesting, and I tell this story about her all the time, was that, like, you know, the sicker she got, the more kind, gentle, patient, you know, she became, right? With everyone else. And so here I am losing it, right? Yep. Like you're not patient,
more on edge,
you know,
obviously,
you know, I'm not even the one going through this. And, she's, you know, as she gets sicker, she gets, you know, more kind, more gentle, more patient, more, you know, and that's not typical, right? I think of people, you know, in a dire sort of situation. And so, so then we, you know, the doctor came in one day and he said, hey, like, you know, this is where the numbers are. This is what the scans look like. We really, my recommendation would be to go home and to, enjoy what you have left.
Almost like they're just gently telling you, like, it's hospice care type situation.
Yeah.
So that's just the recommendation. So, I mean, throughout those days, you're becoming a numbers expert almost. Is there constantly kind of going over these with you?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like I like, I know way more than I probably should about cancer and cancer treatment. And I mean, I was reading around the clock, and so, speaking of when, people kind of got wind of what was happening, a couple of days into this whole journey, I started posting on a Caring Bridge site. And I said to Kirsten, hey, like, I want to keep people informed. So I just kind of want to post on this thing. And she was like, I really don't want that kind of attention around this. I mean, she was a very private person, very, she was reserved. She was humble, quiet. And she said, like, I really don't want that. And I was like, yeah, but like, people are also going to want to know how to support you and how to support us and are going to be in the know, Also, I was thinking in my head too, like, I want to focus on caring for her. Like, I don't want to be fielding 30 phone calls a day either.
Yeah.
Right. And so, so I started posting on this Caring Bridge, and within like 2.5 weeks, it was being followed by like 60,000 people. And I don't know that many people. Yeah. I mean, I don't know that many people. So there was a lot of people that were following the story that were connected to us somehow. I mean, I heard, like, I had a baseball team, like a Little League baseball team, a coach from a Little League baseball team somewhere in Missouri, like, reach out to me and say, hey, we heard about this story. We had a prayer for your wife. Oh, wow. Like, somebody I didn't know had a mass said in her name at like a basilica in Spain or something like that. I mean, it was like, there was, I think there is a human tendency to want to love and care for other people when they're in trouble. And I think that's what we were experiencing. And so at any rate, Doc said, we think you should, consider going home. And she was like, I'm not going home. She's like, in her mind, that was like conceding. That was
giving
like,
up the fight.
Yeah.
Okay.
And she's like, I'm not going home doing nothing. And the doctor said, well, like, if we give her chemotherapy, like, it's probably going to make her worse. Like, it's definitely not going to make her better, and it could make her worse. So, so the next afternoon, he pulled me out in the hallway, and he's like, hey, I just want to know, I want you to understand kind of from my perspective, you guys certainly have the choice to do whatever you want to do, but this is my recommendation. He said, I will order a half dose of the chemo to appease her if that's what she wants to do. But I'm telling you, it's probably going to make her worse. And so I went in the room and I told her, I said, hey, like,
how do you approach that conversation?
Yeah, I definitely wasn't ready for it.
Is that just like a very docile walk in the room? Like, how is she going to take this, man? I think she
knew too. Like, she had really good intuition. She was in the medical field as well. And so I think, when somebody's going through something like that, they know their bodies better than anybody else does, no matter what a number on a paper, or a blood test, or a scan tells a doctor or a nurse. Like, that person knows their body the best, And I said, hey, like, they'll give you a dose of chemo, but it's probably going to make you worse. She was like, okay, bring it. Yeah. And jeez. I was like, wow.
Warrior mentality going
for sure, for sure. And so that's the way she was. And to her, she was going down swinging. Right. And, so then she got really sick the next several days and, took a lot of around the clock care. And then she finally said, hey, like, you got to let me go and go be with Jesus. And I said, okay. And I said, what about the boys? And she said, they have you. And I said, okay. And that was pretty much about it. And we didn't have to, I would say that, when you're looking across the horizon of your life and you're kind of thinking about, if you have closing remarks for someone, right? Like you feel like you might want to have this, like, and here, honestly, Joe, like I had lots of people reaching out to me saying like, hey, can you tell Kirsten this? Can you tell Kirsten this? Can you tell her this? Tell her this, because for them, they wanted her to know those things, right? In whatever closing hours or days or weeks she had left. And neither of us really didn't feel a need to have any sort of like conversation like that. So we enjoyed each other's company, the last, 3 days, and she slept a lot, but neither of us felt any pressure to like say something that was unsaid because there wasn't anything unsaid. And so I think the challenge is for all of us to live in a way like that. Because I saw people that really wanted her to tell her things that they hadn't, in the
people
closing.
Oh, wow. So the people were like, this is my final shot to
Absolutely
express this.
Absolutely.
Admit this, or any number of things.
Absolutely.
What a burden to put on somebody who's sick.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but I think that, if I could sum it up in that sense, she lived a life worth living. And when you have the opportunity to be around someone that has lived a life worth living, and we all have the opportunity to do that. And I think that's kind of that's the legacy that I hope, I'm, carrying on for the boys. And, Maverick's 7 years old, and he knows Kirsten very well. And, picks, reads books and, and looks at pictures and, all those kinds of things. And so, he was 7 months old at the time. The only memories and knowledge of her that he has is what he remembers from, the first 6 months of his life, right? Certainly because there were definitely very impactful things even that happened years later that I'm like, oh, that's a mannerism of your mom, or that's, he would even say that he remembered certain things that like happened way
no
before.
Way that could be true, but somehow it got imprinted.
But somehow he has that memory. And so I think that, I think they embody their mom, on a daily basis. And I think she's proud of them for lots of reasons. And I think that's one of them is that, they represent her and what she stood for very well.
I think I know the answer to this from knowing you enough, but when you see that, when you say something like that about your kids, right? And that is that a mixture of good and bad? Is that bittersweet when you see that come out in them, when you're like, thank God it's there, but also God, it's just it's like rehashing.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, Joe, I say that the toughest thing of all of it is to watch the boys hurt. Like I'm an adult, and I pay somebody money to help me manage and regulate my emotions. I'm regular therapy.
You could have been on this podcast once a week.
I mean,
free.
Geez, what have we been doing? But point being is that like at the end of the day, I'm, cognitively and emotionally, most days a 41-year-old, right? But it's different to watch little kids hurt like that, especially Maverick, he's 7 years old, when he was 2 years old, he had lived longer without his mom than he had with her.
Ugh, that's
right.
What a thing to think about.
Yeah. And Gable turned 14 this year. He's now lived as much of his life without his mom as when he had her. Maverick is now the age that Gable was when they lost their mom. Yeah. And so when you think about kids being that age and losing their mom really suddenly, really tragically, we've met many, many families over the years that have lost a parent to cancer and have had school-age children like that, even ones with very, very young children. But when the I lost my train of thought.
Just haven't been around like those kind of similar stories, but like when you're talking about from the kids' perspective.
Oh,
and
from the
watching them
kids'
hurt,
perspective,
like,
yeah. You watch kids hurt, and kids hurt differently, man. They just do. And your heart breaks for them. So it breaks for you, but then you also bear their sadness too, right? Which a lot of times is can be really overwhelming. But fortunately, I have a great therapist, Ed. Love you, Ed.
shout out Ed.
Shout out to Ed. But he keeps me he keeps me regulated most days.
Like ripping a hole in a wall or something.
Yeah.
Keeps your anger tamped down.
Yeah. No, I mean, life is challenging, right? In all kinds of different ways. I think it's easy to put on the face that everything is great and perfect all the time. And, the pictures and the posts you see on Facebook and the outward reflection of what life is doesn't always illuminate the difficulty that comes along with life, and so I'm not immune to that. You're not immune to that. Nobody's immune to that. And having some transparency and humility about that, I think leaves you open to growing as a person. And I hope that even all the hardship that I've faced, I've had tremendously positive experiences even since then. And my life has been blessed in ways that I never could have imagined. And none of those things would be possible if I haven't been on the journey I've been on, right? So then you also look at all of those positive things that have happened in your life, and those things wouldn't be true if other things hadn't happened either, right? And so being able to see the arc and think about the arc of your life, even through tragedy, also helps you to appreciate all the amazing things that happen as an outgrowth of that too. Because amazing things have happened as an outgrowth too.
Yeah, I mean, you're no doubt. I mean, you're always a positive, smiling human being. You're and now even in the face of this, and like you said, what I've seen of you in the last 20 years has been on Instagram or on Facebook
Sure, of course.
or something,
Yep.
right? And I see the joy that you have with your son at a hockey game or going to up to Minnesota or something. You guys are like, obviously all that good stuff plays into it, and there's a lot of that you hear, like, that people say, like, the worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you, or that piece of like how many truly great people that you admire that you've ever seen in your life, you've been like, well, that guy's never struggled a day in his life.
For sure.
They're always the ones that shine the brightest, the ones that have been through the most unbelievable shit, the craziest things. Yeah. It tends to build some sort of, I don't know what it is, if it's character or perspective or armor or whatever it is, it just helps somehow people be great. It's like you don't waste those experiences.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things I've heard people say over the years, so me and some of my widower friends started a national foundation. We now serve families all over the United States and in multiple countries around the world that were in the same situation we were in. So like you hear our story and you're like struck by how tragic and, how unexpected all of the events were that transpired. But there's a lot of other families like us. So like our situation is not nearly as unique as you think it is. And so I think through all of that, it has been an opportunity to meet other people and also inspire other people that have been in a comparable situation or something similar, to where you don't always know the relationships and opportunities that are going to come your way from a difficult circumstance, but you lean into it, and there's people out there that can help you and support you too.
Did you ever feel like at any point like that people expect to, like, maybe like somebody like me, if I just ran into you, do you ever expect that people expect you to be broken? Like people that maybe have known the story, or, you're just not around them, or even people that are around you all the time still and watched you go through it side by side. Do you ever feel like people, like, do you almost feel like I feel like I'm not broken enough? Like people expect me to be a certain way, and like you just moved on. You gotta keep going for the boys, for her, for everything.
Yeah, for sure. I think anyone that's around me enough still sees my brokenness, and I'm okay putting that on display. I don't hide that part of me because I think it also humanizes me. It makes I think if anything, my brokenness is what people identify with, right? And whether it's a loss of a spouse or a job or a home or a loved one or, whatever the loss is, I feel like, I feel like that's, so grief is the gap between your expected outcome of an event and what actually happened, right? So it's the space between those two things, right? So what I thought was going to happen and what I expected to happen and what actually happened. And the distance between those two things is proportional to your grief, right? So if you lose a aunt, uncle, or a grandparent, even though you were really close to them in their 80s, like the gap between what you thought was going to happen and what actually happened is relatively small, and so is the proportion of your grief,
your
right?
Science is coming out. So
right? You with me?
Science.
And say you lose a child, right? The gap between what actually happened and what you expected was going to happen is very, very large, and thus is the magnitude of your grief, right? And so whatever the loss is, you have a choice. You have a choice. We all have a choice on a daily basis. And I just made a choice to keep going every day. And I think, I'm rambling a little bit.
No. That's,
and
I tried to tell you before we even started, like, don't be afraid to tell a long story.
Yeah.
We didn't, I obviously knew a little bit of this story. I didn't know the details of it. I knew that it happened, and we didn't sit down before and say, hey, we'll talk about this for 20 minutes, and then we'll move on to this, of course. And we'll start with wrestling. This is literally just a conversation that we're having, and I'm having light bulbs flying off in my head right now, things I want to ask, and I don't want to keep you on like this topic longer than it feels right for you,
keep going.
But something that stuck out to me date wise was the way you broke down this kind of time frame early on in that story of kind of seeing that first doctor and then basically them putting together a care plan.
Yeah.
Like, what do you remember in those in between days? I think you said maybe there was 5 days or something, or there was do you remember, like, at what point does that clock start going off in your head that this possibly might be a clock? Or
not at that point. At that point, we were still I was still incredibly optimistic.
Optimism.
Well, yeah, because I was also thinking, like, she was initially diagnosed with liver cancer. Liver cancer is, relatively treatable, especially because you can remove part of the organ, right? And so, I was also thinking she might be a candidate for a transplant. Like, I was going through all the things thinking, like, there's going to be a ton of options here, right? Like, especially, like, this is 2018, right? At the time, I'm like, modern technologies and cancer treatment and all those kinds of things. Like, there's going to be a lot of options. At no point ever did I think we were in the trouble that we were in, really, until she went into the hospital. I mean, even when she was in the hospital, the doctors were relatively optimistic that the surgery was going to go fine, that she was going to start chemo after that, and we were going to be good. I mean, we were really optimistic until probably the closing days, but I think probably about halfway through it, I started to realize, like, man, like, I don't know how quickly we're going to get home, because that was always the goal. The goal was, let's get home, because once we were home, you're stable enough to be able to, be comfortable, but then also get your treatment. And so our goal was just to get home. And, I don't know. It's interesting to think about. Maybe I was a little overly optimistic, I mean, honestly, like, she, Kirsten was the one that ended up being the realist. She was the one that was like, hey, like, no more, and
not without trying, though.
100%.
She took her swing.
She went swinging.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think during that initial window of time, now, I mean, my dad is bladder cancer right now, and so I'm doing a lot to kind of help to navigate his healthcare and those kinds of things. And there was this period of time, kind of when we were between, like, we think he might have cancer, and, like, yes, it was confirmed, and it was a while, and the whole time I just kept telling my mom and dad, like, listen, If you're in trouble, like you're not waiting a week for a doctor to call you. They call you the next morning, or they see you the next day. Like that's what happens when you know you're in a jam. And so I wouldn't say that I really knew that we were in a big jam until I realized that her health was continuing to decline and she wasn't getting to a place where she was going to be able to start chemo healthy. So
it's such a crazy juxtaposition to think about, like starting chemo healthy. Like just the sentence itself doesn't compute,
Yeah.
But I mean, it's a reality of it. And not to close the chapter on it, because obviously it's always open, but for you, do you remember after that day, you described that day really well, of like having all those people come and kind of celebrate. Do you remember like the days after, weeks after, months after, like, do you remember like the first time you were just alone? Like it was just you with your thoughts?
Yeah, it was, so my buddy, Tony Brown, stayed with me, I think for about 5 days after. And so it was probably within about a week. And, I remember putting the boys to bed and I came downstairs and I just sat on the couch and it was quiet. I mean, you could hear a pin drop, and now this was a 27-day sprint. Okay. Like, I mean, this was a 27-day sprint from beginning to end, from her going into the hospital to her dying in March. She went into the hospital on February 16th. And she died the second week in March. And so, we're looking at 27 days, beginning to end.
Did you go into work at all? Like, were you just kind of we got to get this settled, whatever's going to happen here.
I mean, I work for the best school district that I could possibly work for. I mean, I'm still at the same district I am now as I was then. And it's Glenbard. We have 4 high schools: Glenbard, North, South, East, and West. I was at the East Campus at the time. And I cannot even describe the way that they supported me. I was an administrator, right? I had to call them and tell them my wife has a doctor's appointment tomorrow. We think it might be cancer. And I didn't go into work after that. Mm-hmm. I never answered another email that school year. I didn't, like, all of these people took my caseload. They chipped in and answered emails and called parents. And I mean, like, everyone else chipped in and did my job for the rest of that school year. And I didn't have to worry about anything. And, that's not typical. That's not typical in the workplace. It's not typical of like bereavement leave at most corporations. That's not typical, that would never happen to a mother who was having a baby, right? Like, you got to save up time and you got to use it wisely and you got to have strategy and all of those kinds of things for being able to be home with your kids. And I didn't have any time to strategize. So everybody else chipped in and they took care of me. And it was, to this day, I never, ever, ever forget how impactful that was. So I was able to be fully present with my family. I was able to literally be at the hospital around the clock. I didn't leave. I think maybe I started taking Gable to hockey practice maybe by beginning of the third week or so maybe somewhere in there I was comfortable enough leaving. But we also had family, Kirsten's parents were coming up a lot. Her sister and brothers were coming to visit. And so there were periods, she was never alone. So there were times where, like, I might take April to hockey and somebody might sit with her for a while, or I might, get a little bit of a break for a couple hours. And, my birthday kind of fell during that time period. And so I had a buddy come and, take me out for some wings at the restaurant down the street from the hospital, and so it was, there wasn't a ton of, it went really, really quickly, but I guess for the most part, we were really optimistic kind of until the end, until we were facing a lot of reality.
Yeah, and of course my scatterbrain went right across where I was actually originally asking you, but you said that you did kind of realize, 5 whatever days later that you were by yourself and it was quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. No. So, yeah. And I think for the first time there, when you're alone with your own thoughts, the silence can be deafening, and, but I got used to the silence. I'll tell you that much. Like, I mean, there was there's a period of time where I didn't like it, and I was really, it was very disconcerting. But then at the same time, I kind of grew to enjoy the quiet.
Just kind of like sit with your thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wondered if it was like
sometimes it's a good thing and sometimes it's a bad
holy
thing.
Shit, like what?
No, I think, and honestly, I mean, Joe, it was more like at that point, it was more about survival. Like I'm sitting there going like, what am I going to do? Like, how am I going to do this? I had a 7-year-old and a baby, and someone that trusted me that I was going to do a good job.
Yeah, she was like, hey, you got this. Like,
so, I was
a lot of pressure now.
Yeah, but to my, to the point of my first story is when I pulled those group of kids together, I was like, this is what you're doing. This is what you're training for. You're training for the moment that life's going to ask and demand something of you more than you think you have, and you're going to have to find a way. And so I found a way,
How soon after, I know you kind of jokingly mentioned paying somebody to listen to you. So like, how long after you're like, or was it something that you were doing before?
Ongoing.
Even?
Yeah. And honestly, it had been ongoing for a couple of years prior to that, because we had a stillborn baby full term 3 years prior to that. And so it was a way that Kirsten and I had been kind of caring for ourselves, but also reconciling what had happened with our daughter. And so it was a pretty smooth transition, because there was really no transition at all. I just kind of kept my standing appointments, and
And never once did you just say, I'm just getting my ass kicked here. Like,
I said that every day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said that every day, but then I just found a way, to get up. And I say this, I was kind of alluding this earlier. This is a point I was getting to, I think, when I lost my train of thought, was that bad things happen, whether it's a loss of a spouse or a job or whatever. And God, Joe, I'm losing I'm blanking out for a second here.
It's
so,
right. We're throwing big things at you here. I mean, you just thought you were coming to talk to an old friend.
I know. You might just need to edit this part out.
We won't be editing anything.
Yeah.
This is just our conversation. We got 3 Floyds vodka seltzers. We got pineapple mango here.
What is this?
Pineapple mango. I mean, I don't know. I've never seen it before, but I bought it today thinking, hey, maybe Mike will try this with me.
Well, I lost my train of thought twice, so we'll come back to that thought later when I get back to it.
And touching on that, like, obviously we just went through, quite a story, and you just kind of tagged it at the end with, potentially the loss of a child as well.
Yeah.
And I know, again, just to preface, like, you and I haven't really been like keeping up with each other over the years, for 20 years since we graduated or whatever. But I mean, just about every year, or so, whatever, I think you post something or share something on one of the social media networks about your child. And my wife and I look at it every year, and we almost like read it together.
Yeah.
And just like, it's like this, prayer to you and this kind of prayer to us as well, that we're kind of think about it and think about you guys and think about ourselves and how lucky we are with our children and all the children around us, my nieces, nephews, and all that. And that's a real thing. That's something that I one day saw it for the first time and showed it to my wife, and it's something that we kind of every year we see it, and usually I'll run into the kitchen and say, oh, today's the day that Mike posts this, and
I appreciate that.
It's always so well thought out.
That's why I post it every year. I always want to make sure that her memory is something that's at the forefront of our minds and our lives, and I think about her every day. And her name was Arrington Hope, and I think she embodied this idea of hope, and she certainly brought hope to us. And we had Maverick after her, and so Maverick's life symbolizes hope. And so that's why I'm thankful to be able to share that. And you know, I'm a pretty transparent guy. You kind of get what you get. And I think if there's ways to speak value or experience or positivity into other people, that's a good way to do it.
I mean, obviously, you've had plenty of experiences before marriage and everything through sports and family and all that. And you know, you had these kind of major life events happen to you. But, I mean, how have you kind of carried on, you know, since in just, you know, taking this into your work and your teaching and your interactions with youth and with coworkers? And, you know, it's like it colors everything, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it absolutely does. I mean, and like you, all of our experiences shape us. They make us who we are, for better or for worse. And so it certainly, you know, it percolates into every aspect of working with others. Honestly, it's made me a more empathetic person, you know, not always, you know, I would hope a more patient person, but not always, you know, but a more empathetic person, someone who understands that other people's difficulties are very real to them, right? And so one of the things that this is my thought, I came back to it. So one of the things, well, now I'm going too many directions, Joe. I'm going too many different directions here.
You were cooking it. See, it's the empathy. It's that kind of other people's experiences and seeing through different lenses.
I know. So, so when I see other people going through difficulty, a lot of times I would hear where people would be reluctant to share something with me, thinking that, you know, like whatever their difficulty was just wasn't at the same magnitude that mine was, right?
A weird version of like one-upping is like their hang-up. Like, I don't want to be acting, or, you know.
Yeah, like
what he went through is way worse than what I'm complaining
exactly,
about.
right?
Like,
so they minimize or they trivialize their own things, but their own things are real, right? And so, like, problems aren't big or small. They're still people's problems. And having awareness to that and being empathetic to that, I think, has been really important, especially in kind of my work with both young people and adults.
It's also relative to the situation. I mean,
absolutely,
it's relative to what's the worst thing that's happened to you.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And people say this to me, and they say, man, like, if I went through something like that, this was my thought that I forgot 3 times. If I went through something like that, I don't know if I could do it. I couldn't do what you did. I don't know what I would do. I don't know if I could figure it out. I don't know if I could do that. And I say, yes, you can. It is in every single one of us. And you may not know what that is that's in you until you really need it, but there is a spirit that is inside of all of us that you have the ability to overcome obstacles. All of us do. It doesn't matter what they are. And sometimes you just don't know that you can until you're in that situation.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that's compelling, right? I think that is, people look at themselves and say, oh, well, I don't know what I would do if I was in that situation. I'm not sure if I could overcome, what you did. But you could.
It's such a thing to say, right? It's a thing that you hear people say.
Yeah.
I always try to balance, like, there's like that thing, that the piece that you said, I genuinely buy into that, right? Like, that you have a little more in you than you think you do. Yeah. And I think that's everything. I think
for sure.
I think that's running 5 miles and you probably do 6. And, I think it's all the David Goggins mentality. That kind of stuff. I believe in that.
40%. Yeah.
And then I also believe in, I think there's also this other part of that scenario, like, what do people, you hear people say, like, the Lord saves toughest battles for, strongest soldiers, or, that kind of thing. So it's like, it's somewhere in the middle there, I think. Like, you definitely have more in you, A lot of those people want to offer you up, like, I could never do what you did. And I love that you're automatically like, yeah, you could.
You could.
You'll figure it out when it's time.
You would. I hope that you don't have to.
Think that you would have been able to do it, probably. No. If somebody would have described that to you, you didn't like.
Well, here's the other crazy thing, Joe. You want to ask somebody, like, what their greatest, like, mortal fear was for like years and years and years. Like some people are afraid of spiders. Some people are afraid of tall buildings. Some people are afraid of heights. Needles for you.
Yeah, needles.
Okay. My pinnacle fear was losing my spouse at an untimely or young age.
You're like premonition there.
Yeah.
Jeez.
To the degree that you remember that movie Up? Up?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
When it first came out, Kirsten had heard about it and wanted to take me to go see it and didn't know the storyline. And
did you know it? Or
no.
She just went in there.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, there's a really cute new movie, Disney movie. Let's
balloons,
go see it."
there's a dog.
Pixar, DreamWorks, whatever it was. And she says, so we literally, it's the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Is the arc of this, like this young, this two little kids, and they fall in love as teenagers, they grow up, they grow old, and then the wife dies. And then here's the husband alone, sitting by himself in the house, wallowing in his sorrow. And I will never, ever forget it. I turned and I looked at her and she was like, "I'm so sorry."
She knew.
She's
so
like,
you
"I have
already like talked about
yeah.
this
Oh yeah.
years
Oh
for
yeah."
years,
And so she's like, "I'm so sorry. I had no idea." And I was like, "Really? With this?" And
you didn't go on the IMDb? You didn't check out a synopsis? Anything?
No. And she's like, "Do you want to go?" And I was like, "No, we can stay." I was like, "I think it's going to get happier before it gets any sadder, so we can stay." But it was like a thing. And so much so, there were, years later, years before she was ever sick, we were in the kitchen and she said, "Hey, if something were to ever happen to me, I would want you to get, remarried. You know that, right?" And it was kind of out of the blue. And now we had friends of ours, a really close friend of hers from college, who had lost a husband at a young age, plane crash. And so this is something that she thought about. And she said, if something ever happened to me, I'd want this for you. And Joe, I never gave her an answer about how I felt.
Yeah.
And I always thought about it too. It was like, yeah, I would want her to be happy. I would want her to pursue another relationship. I would want that for my boys. But I didn't want to think about that.
Hell no.
Right? And so, but she was like intentionally kind of like entering into this conversation, and I didn't want to have anything to do with it. And I kind of ducked it and dodged it. And that, like I'm telling you, that was years before she was sick. And I don't know. She just always had some level of intuition about that.
Well, you somehow had some weird built into you too, or
yeah.
What a match! What a match you guys figured out, huh? You feel like it does it make you more sensitive to like people when they have a complaint, like, "Oh, my sides hurting," or like my back, like do you find yourself like, don't fuck around with it? Or
I get
I can't be projecting that on people.
No, that's a good question. I don't think I'll tell you, when I know that people have cancer, that's where I kind of like, that's where I can impose my, I have to be careful not to project all of our experience onto others, because that's where I've gotten in trouble, right?
So have their own experience.
Absolutely.
Nobody knows what cards are getting dealt.
For sure. And we have a very, very extreme example, right? So like, I was remarried a couple of years ago. My wife Tiffany and I talk about this, because first of all, I deal with lots of families impacted by cancer, both recently and years ago. And so she was like, I was like, she goes, "I think you're oddly around this frequency of like these types of events." And I think it's more just because of your experience and, what you know. But then I also hear of people with cancer and I'm like, "Oh, they're in trouble." or nah, they're fine. I think I just kind of relate our situation to every other situation. That's not very fair. It's just I have a framework that I'm kind of operating inside that is based on my own experience. And so it's difficult for me sometimes to let other people like their, sounds horrible, but like their cancer experience to be their own cancer experience and not ours, because ours was like really sudden, super fast, very tragic, and so it's interesting is that, that we started the foundation largely because people reach out to us and they hear about stories, their neighbor, their cousin, their sister, very similar story. And they instantly try to associate, like, do I know someone else with this? It's kind of a human nature thing, right? You try to immediately associate that situation with another situation that you know of.
Yep.
And so I get lots of people, my other widow and widower friends too, we get lots of people reaching out saying, hey, my neighbor just had the same kind of cancer that Kirsten had, or my cousin's wife died of the same thing, or, do you have any advice? Do you have any recommendations? Do you have any? And it's so hard sometimes to, now when we find out about it after the fact, that's when we're most impactful. But a lot of times people reach out to me right after someone's had a cancer diagnosis. And I say like, I'm not exactly the beacon of hope. Right. Yeah. So like, I
might be the last guy you want to talk to.
Yeah. So I'm not, this arena. Yeah. It's probably going to be a while before I'm impactful. And once we're impactful forever. Right. But this also may not feel like the right time because we're the reminder that things don't always go well. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And so
your story may not be the one that they're looking for.
For sure. Mm-hmm. Not right now anyways. Right now. Later, it's a very inspirational story. Right. Like I got launched into single parenthood overnight. There's this woman who lived this really beautiful and compelling life, died valiantly, left behind 2 little kids. 4 years later, I meet a beautiful woman who has a daughter from a previous marriage, get married. It's a redemptive story, right? It's something that is like, that part is inspiring to widows and widowers because knowing me before, you're like, wow, that's really sad and tragic and horrible. Yeah. And like, I also just don't want people feeling sorry for me and bad for me all the time either. Right. And so it's important to embrace the redemption that has happened as even in spite of all of the hardship, because we all have a story of redemption. It looks different in different ways, depending on what your journey is to that, but we all have a story of redemption in some way.
And the way you're telling the story and that point that you were making about putting yourself in people's shoes, I think is kind of the almost the gist of it. But like in the first episode I recorded, Nate and I talked a little bit. I jokingly made a lot of jokes about how every time somebody tells me something, I'm completely centric. It's like self-centric.
Yeah,
to immediately put myself, or like you said, like I know a guy. I know a guy who went through a similar thing. So even like listening to you talk, it's like I can't even turn it off. Like I'm mentally
for sure
putting myself there, and that's where a lot of the questions come from, I think. And
absolutely.
A lot of like that. So I hope like you don't take them as like, oh, that's a weirdly insensitive.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I'm telling this very powerful story.
No, 100%.
But it's like I'm having these thoughts of like, okay, so were there times where you're like, I feel guilty that I found happiness, like I found guilty that I came out of it, or did you already have that coped with? You already
no, I feel like I had reconciled that part of it. Like I felt like I gave myself some permission to pursue happiness, but it was a lot of it was Kirsten wanted me to, right? And so like I did not have to reconcile wondering like, am I doing the right thing? Am I not doing the right thing? Like I knew I was doing the right thing, and I was able to make myself fully available to my relationship with Tiffany because I had reconciled that discrepancy between like, should I do this or not do this, right? Should I pursue another relationship for the sake of for me and the boys, or should I not? Should I just, are we just going to be the 3 Musketeers and install urinals in the house and just, and just ride, But I didn't want that. She didn't want that for me. I didn't want that for the boys. And so I think that was that allowed me the space to be able to make my heart fully available for somebody else, because at that time it was really consumed with a lot of heartache, you know?
Yeah, it's understandable, right? It's like, everybody would kind of be like, well, yeah, obviously you're hurting. Yeah. But at what point, like, no, there's no playbook, there's no handbook on like, this is enough time. Now it's time to heal. Now it's time to make this move. Like, it just all, I'm assuming it all just happened natural for you. Or you're just kind of like, it just worked out. It's happenstance. It's, in the midst of my day-to-day life, whatever, just happened to come together. Maybe we'll dive into that story a little bit more too. But
that sounds good.
I did want to talk to you a little bit about, like, and whether it's related to the things we just talked about or not. I mean, I think you always had this in you long before anything like that happened. But you're involved in, like, a lot of giving back, and you kind of were talking about it. But I don't know, like, what official capacity are you working with specific, groups that do this? Is this like a philanthropic thing that so I'd love to hear more about what you've been doing, whether it's youth stuff or just like you were talking about with the Widowers Club type things like that.
So a couple of years ago we started something called the Clear Ribbon Foundation. Kind of rolls off the tongue, www.clearribbon.com. It's real easy to remember.
Put that ad space right
there you go.
Click it.
And really what I was describing, that it's very common for people to reach out to us, when they hear similar stories. And it started to happen with so much frequency that I have a small, really close group of widow and widower friends that kind of brought me into the fold. So my friend Gina Falo had lost her husband to cancer, just a couple of years before Kirsten. And we happened to work in the same school district, but we didn't know each other.
Oh, wow.
And so she reached out to me, and I was kind of like, yeah, thanks, but like, I don't want to hear anybody else's sad story either right now, And so I kind of, I didn't really reciprocate, and she reached out to me again, and took me a while, like 6 months, to like respond back to her and say, like, yeah, I'm willing to meet some other people that have been in a similar situation as me, because I also was kind of scared, right? Yeah. So the first funny but not funny story was I got invited to a hospice, like a grief group for like hospice families, right? So like people that just lost a family member to hospice, they invite you to this, like, if you don't have anywhere else to go to talk about your sad story, like, come here. Mm-hmm. So I went there, and I was the youngest person in the room by like 35 years. Oh, wow. So then, like, everybody told their story and why they were there. And most people were telling stories about, like, they were so sad that their grandchildren didn't, had to say goodbye to their grandpa and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be real awkward. So then they get around to me, and there's people that were there for different reasons, right? So it wasn't just a spouse. It was brothers or siblings or children or whatever. It just happened to be that night was, mostly spouses and all people older than me. So I told our story in a relatively brief period of time, and I will never forget, everyone was just looking at me with like puzzled faces.
Like, what?
Yeah, like they couldn't fathom what, and I was like, well, that was kind of a weird contest of who has the saddest story, and definitely never coming back to this again. Yeah. So I kind of distanced, so I was seeing a different therapist at the time, and so I had my connection with him, and so I was having kind of that individual one-on-one, but I didn't have the community. And so Gina was inviting me into a community that I didn't know that I needed.
Okay.
I finally reciprocated, and the love and compassion and care that I felt, the comfort that I felt around other people that had been through a similar circumstance, was unlike any peace that I had felt since Kirsten had passed away. And I was like, wow, this is incredibly comforting. It's very inspiring. I know I'm going to be okay. All of these other people are okay too.
It's got to be shocking though.
Yeah. But I was stunned to realize that I would feel so compelled to want to be a part of this community of people, even though the reason that brought us together, we all hated.
Do you remember like what was the turning point? What was the breaking point when you're like, fine, I'm gonna fucking call her?
Because I honestly, I didn't think I wanted to get one more email, and I felt compelled to respond because I was also
one more email. I will lose my shit.
She's like, I would love for you to meet Gina someday. She is
Shout out Gina.
Shout out Gina.
Gotta get shout out.
She's such a loving, compassionate, but also like really energetic and fiery, like Italian woman, right? And people like that draw others close to them, right? And so I was also a principal in the district, and I knew that Gina was going to continue to be persistent. So it was a combination of like, I know she's going to be persistent, but then there was also starting to be this narrative in the back of my head is like, this might be good for you, right? Okay. So just like take a risk, And so she invited me and the boys over to her house one day. She invited another widow, really good friend of ours, Cindy Rick, and we got to meet the boys got to meet other kids who had been through a similar situation as them. And all of a sudden, they didn't know each other, but they were all playing together, and it was like they had known each other their entire lives. And there's this thing that brought them together, this thing that like bonded them. And we all kind of sat back and watched it, and we're like, man, like I'm really glad that my kids have other kids that have been through this, and we all hated why we were there, but we loved our community, our little small tribe so much. And we knew that the comfort that it brought us could potentially also be given to other people too. So as the years unfolded, Gina would get lots of phone calls. I would get lots of phone calls. Cindy would get lots of phone calls. I was a principal at a middle school in Lombard, and one of my teachers had breast cancer. And I saw her husband dropping her off early in the morning, a few consecutive days in a row, and I realized she's probably not able to drive, but not entirely sure of her prognosis. I knew that she had cancer, but came to find out that day, the day that I confronted her about it, I just said, hey, like, I'm worried about you. I just wanted to check in with you and see if everything's okay. How can I support you? How can I be helpful? And she pretty much disclosed to me that she was really sick. And she wrote her husband's phone number on a Post-it note, and she said, I know, and her and I both knew that was probably the last conversation we were going to have with each other. And she said, I know that my husband's going to be okay because I see a lot of the same qualities in him that I see in you. But if you wouldn't mind reaching out to him, I would appreciate it, and maybe invite him to church too. And so I said, sure, I will. And that was the last conversation her and I had. I met him at her wake, and Jamie and I have, been best friends ever since. So me, Jamie, Cindy, and Gina all started hanging out together, and we all had kids that were in kind of comparable ages. And so as that was happening, simultaneously, lots of people were continuing to reach out to us. And we said, well, we could do some things to help them, right? Like a lot of things happen when someone, like a spouse dies, right? So like sometimes a husband dies and the surviving wife doesn't have an opportunity or knowledge to cut the grass, right? So like she's driving 4 kids around to sports practices. She doesn't have time to just like stop and take an hour and a half and cut the grass. So we would just go and do some basic, kind of started as doing like basic like lawn care service projects, right? Like we were just kind of showing up like, hey, like you got people who know and love and care about you, and we're going to do something that's helpful to you, because most people's love language during that time is acts of service. Yeah. So you speak their love language, they feel really loved, and you kind of continue to kind of organically build that community. So that's what we were doing. And then we had a conversation of like, well, we could really formalize this into something. We could do some fundraising. We were just putting up all the cash at the time to like be buying people meals and dinners. And so one of the most impactful things while Kirsten was sick for us was a family put a cooler on our front porch. Because what do most people want to provide for you when you're going through a difficult time? Meals. But what they don't realize is that can be intrusive, because you got to be home at 4:00 to receive it. Yeah. And it might need to go in the oven at 375 for 20 minutes to, be servable to
fridge and freezer space.
All of it, right? Yeah. And so, but I couldn't be home. I had a 7-year-old and a 7-month-old. I was at the ice rink. I was going here. I was going there. I was grocery shopping. I was, there's a point at which meals are not necessarily helpful. So the cooler was impactful. So when we started kind of formalizing a lot of our thoughts around how we might be able to start helping people, we said, well, what if we just packed a cooler with a bunch of stuff that people might need? It was during COVID. Toilet paper was like a huge commodity at the time. Hand sanitizer, right? All those kinds of things. And so we just started taking coolers and packing them with a meal or a gift card, toilet paper, hand sanitizer, and some like books for the kids about grief. And it was really helpful to a lot of people. And a lot of it ended up being because they now had a vehicle. Some of what we were providing was a vehicle for them to talk to their kids about what had happened to their mom or dad. Because if you don't talk about it, this wedge of silence kind of grows in your family, and there's, that's difficult to recover from. So we said, well, we just got to come up with a name. And we said, well, we like the ribbon idea because of all the, the ribbons for all the different cancers. But like Cindy and Gina met in the doctor's office. Both of their husbands died of melanoma. Jamie's wife died of breast cancer. Kirsten died of colon cancer. And so we couldn't really we weren't going to do this like weird meshed up ribbon. And Jamie kind of presented the idea to his 2 kids, and his oldest child, his daughter Lizzie, was like, what if it was clear? And we were like, that's a great idea. And so then we contacted a graphic designer and we said, hey, could you do something that makes a ribbon look clear? That's kind of a weird concept, like from a graphic design standpoint. And he was like, yeah, I could do that. So we had a logo. We had some legal attorneys donate their services to trademark it for us. Wow. And that was it. And so now we have a care package called a care cooler that we customize for each family. So once we know about your family situation, we find out how many kids you have, what their ages are. We provide age-appropriate resources to talk to your kids about grief. We also provide different kinds of family activities and things like that in there. We have a Quilters Guild of women that make custom quilts for us. Guild. Yeah,
that sounds awesome.
It is. They are awesome. They make quilts and pillows and things that kids can put photographs and stuff in. We even customize quilts for families with photos of them on there. And so it's so the care cooler is our primary care package, but we ship it all over the United States now. We serve dozens and dozens of families across the country, and it's a special thing. So we have a personal touch where we kind of just intervene in whatever ways we can that are impactful.
How's that process start? Is that something they just got to visit a website and they start filling out information basically so you guys can have?
Yeah. So if somebody knows of a family that we might be able to help, they go to the website, clearribbon.com, and there's a contact form on the website. They fill out that contact form. They provide us whatever information they can. A lot of times a link to an obituary or a caring bridge or some sort of article or information about the family is helpful. Yeah. But then as they give us as much detail about the children as they can, names, ages, and then we put a care cooler together for them. We ship it out if need be. If they're local, we prefer to deliver it in person because then we introduce ourselves and say, hey, there's other people like you that know you and love you and care about you and are here to help.
Nice touch.
Yeah. And you don't know about us. You don't necessarily want to be a part of our group, but there's going to come a time when you do. And so we're here for you when you need that support. And so that's kind of how it goes. And a lot of times, more often than not, Joe, it's people that are, it's all word of mouth. Somebody hears of somebody else that knows me or knows Gina or knows Jamie or knows Cindy. They hear a story in their community. The 4 of us our stories are pretty well known in the areas where we are. And so anytime somebody hears of something like this, they think of us now, and so we've been able, I think, to have a large impact. We had a family, this past spring Husband passed away from the same type of cancer that Kirsten had. 3 boys, travel baseball players, and mom's not home, right? Like she's going to, 67,000 baseball games between 3 boys. And I mean, you think about, like, you're a baseball family, right? And so a lot of times you got to divide and conquer, or you got to send 2 kids somewhere, or one parent this way, another parent the other way, right? Single parents that are widowed, they don't have the opportunity to do that. And so we told her, you focus on your kids, you focus on travel baseball, we'll take care of all your lawn care until the end of the growing season. So I contacted a local landscape company and just said, hey, this is who we are, this is what we do. There's a family in your community who suffered a loss. We're supporting them. Make sure you take care of the lawn and all related items at this address until October and send us the bill. And that's it.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So then we just call the family and let them know what's going on. We say, hey, we heard about you through so-and-so, a family friend. This is what we want to do for you. And it's life-changing for some people. I mean, we've had stories where, people have lost health insurance, and we've been able to mobilize insurance options for them. People lose a spouse and lost an income, so they got to get a job. So we help them build a resume and help them, look for jobs or contact headhunters. I mean, we make sure they're adequately dressed and have clothing to be able to wear to interviews if that's a need. There's a lot of different things.
So it's not just this one thing. It's not just this cooler. It's not just it's just
really what we do is we personalize how we intervene. We personalize how we intervene, and that's what is impactful.
Yeah, no 2 are the same.
No. I mean, these are all situations in which, right, like there's some common thread that runs through these things. So there's some common ground that we have to talk about this and build a network and build a community. But every situation is unique in its own right too, right? And so the problems that each family faces are different. And we just really try to put a personal touch on, how we intervene. So we had a family that last year, they had to kind of scale back on a lot of their, the nice to haves around the house. And one of the things was that dad would bond with the kids around kind of different, television shows or entertainment, movies. That was kind of their way to wind down at the end of the day. And I had heard about this through a family friend. They didn't know that I knew, but then we said, hey, let's go grab dinner, and we took them out to dinner and had a nice conversation. And then I said, hey, we got 2 years of Netflix for your family, enjoy.
Oh man, that's
and
nice.
So it's those types of things, and that's not outrageously expensive, right? But it was a
big impact.
Yeah, but huge impact because we knew the need, we met the need. And so that's really what we try to do through Clear Ribbon is, identify the need, name the need, and execute it.
Now, how about, obviously that stuff's quote unquote, that's fun stuff too. That obviously brings a great amount of joy to you and to others in that group of people. But like, how about for you? How about the personal wins and the fun stuff that's been going on for you? How cool is it watching, what is he, 14 now, you said?
Yeah, Gable's
playing
14.
hockey?
He's a freshman in high school.
How sick is it to watch a 14-year-old?
It's a lot more entertaining.
Little you out there.
It's a lot more entertaining level of hockey than when he was 7.
No, yeah. Hey,
so
that's the same for most sports, I think, right?
Yeah. So it only gets better as they get older. It's really entertaining. It's a high level. He plays at a high level, and so it's a high level of hockey to watch. And he's getting his first flavor of football this year. He's never played football before.
Really? And he's deciding now at this age.
Yeah.
Ready to go crack some heads. Huh?
Yeah. Well, so it's funny because...
Did you play defensive back mostly?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, you were a defensive back.
Yeah, I was mainly defensive back, and I played a little bit of safety, like strong safety when we would like run a cover 2. But for the most part, I was a defensive, like free safety and corner. I played mostly.
What do you got Gable pegged for?
Well, so here's what was funny. So he kind of came into this thing. He's a great athlete, okay? And this is the conundrum was he could play quarterback because he has the physical skill set, but he's never played football before so he doesn't have like the football aptitude, right?
Yeah.
And so like that just takes
He's
some
got an
time
arm,
learning.
He's got the athleticism. He can do
For sure. He can run, catch, and throw.
And he's smart enough to understand a playbook. Or,
Definitely.
call a play,
for sure. But at the same time, there's
IQ that comes with years and years and years of being on the
exactly
field. Just understanding what's happening around you, the little things.
100%. And so initially he wasn't getting a ton of reps, And now we live in Batavia. Okay, football in Batavia is like institutional.
Yeah.
Okay, like Maverick.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, Maverick is 7 years old, and Maverick is in the youth program, and I bet you 80% of the kids on the varsity team have been in the program since they've been Maverick's age. They are repetitively, year after year, a top-notch program, competing for state playoffs and a title, year after year after year. It's a wonderful program. Tons of parents involved, great coaches, great community support. I mean, they have all of the ingredients of the secret sauce, all the ingredients. And so it's fun to be a part of. But I also had to explain to Gable, you've never played football before, and you are playing in a program that is historically awesome. Okay, so you got to earn your reps, right? Now he's been in hockey, and he's always been the guy in hockey from the time he's been 7 or 8. So this is a first flavor of not being the guy, right? But what a tremendous lesson to learn. Okay. So he's coming home from practice pissed off. He's like, I'm just standing there with my helmet in my hand, and I said, well, part of it,
man
too,
of action, goddammit.
Yeah, he's like, yeah. So I said, well, part of it too, buddy, is you're standing around waiting to play quarterback, and at the scrimmage, I heard the coach going, hey, I need a corner.
Mm-hmm.
Or I need a free safety, or I need a this, or I need a that, or I need a gunner.
Down.
Yeah, I need somebody on kickoff. And you're standing there waiting to play quarterback. I was like, if you want to play, you got to work while you wait for your opportunity, and then you got to make the most of your opportunity. So this work while you wait concept has been the most impactful learning lesson for him in his adolescent life thus far.
Work while you wait.
Work while you wait. So you work while you wait for your opportunity, and when your opportunity comes, if you've been working, you'll make the most of your opportunity. If you have not been working while you've been waiting, and you've been pouting and having a bad attitude and not being coachable and not being on time, not showing up to practice when it's convenient for you, then when you get your opportunity, you're going to miss it, or you're not going to make the most of it because you were pouting the whole time you should have been working. But if you work while you wait, when that opportunity comes,
boom, you're ready to snatch.
You're ready to snatch it. And so I just been having that conversation with him over and over again. He's like, Dad, I am working. He was at everything. He didn't miss. And so then week 1, they started putting him in at corner a little bit. Well, he made a couple of huge plays. Had a forced fumble that we recovered. He had a couple of big, pass breakups, and he thought that was pretty cool. And the coach acknowledged him after the game. It was like, hey, listen, Gable's never played football before, but he's out here trying to make plays. He's just working hard. He's like, I want to see more guys doing that kind of stuff. So week 2 comes, a lot of the same action. Week 3 comes, and they put him in at quarterback in the second half. And the first play, he pops a 30-yard run, and the second play, he throws a 25-yard post down the field, and the kid catches it and takes it to the 1-yard line. They score on the next play. And I was like, oh, well.
I'm the smartest dad alive.
Yeah, I'm this kid's got some skills. But at the same time, I was
told him
work while you wait. Yeah. Because when you get the opportunity, if you make the most of it, you're going to get more opportunities, right? So opportunity breeds more opportunity if you've been working while you wait. So closing seconds of the game, it's tie game, 3rd and long. We got the ball on our own 42. The interesting thing, dude, we ran all I formation, ISO, power, everything was super basic for us. These kids, and a lot of high schools are doing this now, these kids are running shotgun spread offense.
Yes.
And they're reading the defense, they're reading the coverage, they're calling audibles on the line, and he's telling me all this stuff. I'm like, what? So at any rate, shotgun spread offense, one back. He takes the snap, and one guy comes in completely untouched. The end comes around the left side.
Backer's not picking anything up. He's just running a route or something. Or
So Gable rolls out. He breaks one tackle and he launches a ball like 40 yards downfield. Kid catches it and runs into the end zone. Place is going crazy. It's a freshman game. Okay, it was a Thursday night freshman game. Place is going crazy. Flag on the play. He was like half of a foot length over the line of scrimmage. Illegal forward pass. Brought it back. Game ended in a tie.
Stop.
But anyway, he came off the field with a smile from ear to ear. He will never forget that for the rest of his life. But it solidified this moment in which he understood work while you wait. Because the whole time while you're waiting, it sucks. Waiting is terrible, especially when you're working hard.
Yeah.
Right? So think about, and I told him, Gable, this has defined my entire professional career. You work really hard while you wait for opportunity, and then you make the most of your opportunity. And like your entire life will be defined by that principle. And he has the opportunity to learn it through freshman football when he's 14 years old. Yeah. So
Dad
hopefully
Dad didn't just get handed, admin and principal. And,
no.
Dad sat in the cut, did my work, worked hard, built relationships, did the thing.
You work while you wait.
You can tie that right back to the beginning of this conversation. My brain's having a hard time getting back there, but when you were saying it, I was thinking about it. Not just the work while you wait, but what were we talking? Oh, that kind of little. You saw him in his eyes take that taste of success.
Absolutely.
That attached you so much to wrestling.
For sure.
I mean, not obviously he had that in hockey, and that
Absolutely.
brought him to hockey, but you're seeing like the early stages in the later years almost for him.
Absolutely.
Of like, damn, I just had made a pass breakup to this. Now all of a sudden, I'm working a little bit harder. I'm a little more engaged in practice. Not that he wasn't already, because obviously he's already got that built in. Because it doesn't matter if he never played football. He's obviously had a tough time working his way up in hockey. That he knows what it takes to be elite at a sport. So.
For sure, and that's the thing that I love the most about it is that he is also getting an opportunity to see how hard work translates to other things, not just hockey or not just school or not just it permeates across all things.
So the 7-year-old, he's just a lazy bum, huh? Anything? What's the 7-year-old doing? I mean, Gable's out here changing the world.
Yeah, I got Maverick wrestling a couple of years ago.
That's awesome.
So
is that fun? My buddy Kyle's got his boys both. In he loves it. He was like you. He breathe. I mean, he still follows high school wrestling to this day.
Sure.
Like he's big on it. He was a Manuka kid, but he's a few years younger than us.
Yeah.
But his boys every weekend, it's tournaments. The younger one, both of them savages, doing a great job. They're learning a lot. You see it helping them in baseball. You see it on both ends for them. So, I mean, talk about that a little bit. I mean, how much has wrestling been kind of?
I learned a lot,
and for him.
Well, what's funny is I learned a lot from all the mistakes I made with Gable. So I started Gable when he was real young. And he was good. And by the time he was like 7 or so, I was like treating him like a Division I athlete, and he was like 7 years old. And so like I always joke, but it's absolutely true that like we ended up in hockey because I was a terrible coach dad for wrestling. Like I was the worst kind of coach dad you could have. And here's the problem. I knew better, but I still couldn't control myself. And so I just pushed him
from the great Bill Winkie. How dare you? How dare you?
So I pushed him way too hard, way too young. Thought I was doing a good thing because I was trying to give him an edge against the competitive, advantage of any other kid that he would run into, and it backfired. And so within a couple of years, he didn't want to wrestle anymore. That's how we ended up in hockey. So when Maverick came along, I was like, I'm going to correct all my mistakes that I made.
Things are going to be different.
Yeah. And so, like, how foolish we are to think like that we can take all the things that we learned from parenting one kid and apply it to the next kid, and that it'll just work exactly the way they figured it out. And so,
go figure. They're two different little humans.
Imagine that. So everything I was like, parenting is like the most ridiculous bait and switch ever. Like, all of the things I learned from the older one, I now apply to the younger one, and none of those things work either. So Maverick is very much like, he's very athlete minded, just because we enjoy athletics, and he wants to follow in Gable's footsteps a lot. He definitely wants to play hockey. He's wrestled, but he also wants to do all these other things. He wants to play football. He wants to play basketball. He wants to, it's like every time he turns around, he wants to do a new thing. So he's playing football right now, and having a great season. He scored 2 touchdowns last weekend, 2 touchdowns this weekend. He's like, now he's hooked, right? So success.
He's Christian McCaffrey of
the youth
right
of
now.
the Batavia Youth Football League, the first and second grade teams. He's lights out, man.
I love it.
And so, but like, the point is, it's that theme of success, is addictive. And so now he's like super hooked on football. He loves football. But then every time we turn around, he also wants to play hockey. So I got him started playing piano. So
ice time's tough to come by.
Yeah, and the nice thing is with the little guys, it's the time slots are usually a little bit earlier. Like Gable right now is practicing at 9:10 to 10:10 on a Thursday night.
Yeah, 14 years old.
Oh yeah.
You get the shit times.
Oh man, it's like these are spicy days for him, man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, he's the first one out the door in the morning. He gets on the bus at 6:45 in the morning, and
you're proud though.
I am. Like, and honestly, Joe, he is completely 100% fully independent.
Yeah.
He's 14 years old. He sets his own alarm. He gets up. He showers every morning for school. He makes his own breakfast. He makes his own lunch, and he leaves on time every single day.
Does he poof his hair up like the high school kids do?
Dude, he's got the
thing.
He's got the
What's he do?
The broccoli cut.
He's got the broccoli cut.
Yeah. He's got the thing in the center and the
curls.
front. Yeah. Oh, he's got super curly hair.
Joseph wants it, but his hair is just flat.
Oh,
just
yeah.
flat and thick.
Yeah.
Nothing he can do.
Oh yeah.
So he's self-sufficient, fully out the door.
It's really impressive, man.
Love that.
That's honestly like, I'm proud of him for lots of reasons. I'm really proud of that. Yeah. I know I've worked around young people my entire life. Okay, my entire professional career, anyways. I've been around kids his age, and not every 14-year-old freshman is self-managing like that. Yeah. So I'm really, we fight other battles, right? Like, I'm definitely oversimplifying how difficult parenting a teenager is, because some days it's really not easy and hard, but
that's why you have therapists.
Yeah, that's what I pay Ed for.
Again, shout out Ed.
Mm-hmm. Shout out Ed. This is really good, by the way, Joe.
Yeah, it's not bad.
This.
I mean, it's a little sweet, but it's pretty tasty.
And to be honest with you, these are not two flavors that combined I would probably have a fancy for, pineapple mango. But
pineapple
this
mango
is
actually turned me on a little bit when I saw it. I was like, that actually sounds pretty good.
It's delicious.
Very
and
tropical.
3 Floyds.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they built a distillery not that long ago, so they've been.
Oh, really?
They've been making their own liquors, so this makes sense.
Yeah.
The canned beverage game. The world has changed. It's not our.
It's like Grey Duck.
Us splurging for Miller Lights back in the day.
No, not at all. Not at all.
It's
not at all.
The same.
Reminds me of Grey Duck. Grey Duck vodka. Grey Duck seltzers.
Dude, I had to dig into that. a little bit after we
awesome.
talked.
I should have brought some for us.
You actually have some at home?
I have 3 cans left. I kind of I
you
ration them.
Those. Yeah, you got to ration.
Yeah, I ration them just because you can only they're coming to Benny's in Illinois.
Well, let's hope
so. It's not all that far away, but the only time I can get is when I go up to visit in Minnesota. But then I always load up.
I mean, if you want to give a little more detail in case people are like, "What the hell is he talking about?"
Yeah.
I mean, we went to high school with a very awesome human being. I would say Jenny was one of the most like dog mentality people I've ever met in my life. She's such a hard worker,
for sure,
an athlete.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, she always had it. Like I remember playing like driveway basketball at like the Sukas one day and have her like throw the ball at me.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
for just making a shot. Just, like she was like, "You're not supposed to beat me. Like, I'm the fucking athlete."
They are a great couple and a great combination. So we knew Jenny from high school. Chad and I met actually at freshman orientation.
Well, here you say who they are.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
really,
okay, all right.
Yeah, just
so
in case people who listen won't know.
So Chad Greenway, he was a linebacker for the Minnesota Vikings for 11 years. He played for the Vikings. He was their first round pick in 2006, 17th overall. And
real quick to interject on this story, am I mistaken? Did he blow his knee out his rookie year, like a preseason or something?
Oh yeah, and he
Right?
he
Was
also
it in Iowa?
both.
It was both.
Both.
Well, because didn't he finish his college career on like an onside kick or something that they recovered, but they called it back? Or like,
Yeah,
I feel like I remember watching that game live.
Yes.
And I knew that Jenny and he were together at the time at Iowa. But I was just like, what a sad fucking end to your amazing college career at Iowa. And then he gets drafted. And I'm like, how cool is that?
First
like,
round.
Somebody I know, is married to a guy who got drafted. And then he blows his knee out in the preseason.
Yeah,
like,
opening kickoff.
What kind of luck?
Yeah.
Dude?
Yeah.
Kickoffs must be a tough subject.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So so Chad and I became friends our freshman year of college. We lived down the hall from each other. And, he and Jenny probably would have met without me. They were kind of hanging out in the same circles.
Credit, Mike,
and but I do. I always tell him, I was like, So, but I was the common denominator between the two of them. And they have had a long, beautiful marriage and 4 awesome kids. And so I've enjoyed lots of fun memories with them up in Minnesota over the years, and also going to get to see Chad play. And
now you're a fucking Vikings fan, which is awesome,
institutional. And so
I can't even like not like them like I used to. Like I don't have the same animosity.
I mean, this is the first.
It's ramped back up since he's retired. Like a lot more. No. And like I never met him. Like I don't talk. It's not like Jenny and I talk all the time or anything. But like I mean, I always thought that was a cool thing. And he always seems like the most genuine guy. And
incredible.
I still talk to like Snickerus and quite often. We're both into beer and bourbon and stuff. So we talk on. We hung out every now and again. But he's just like, dude, he's so nice. He's just such
incredible.
a good guy. Like
he's
like human.
Yeah, if you, I mean, he is such a tremendous example for young athletes, for young people, so there are professional athletes that we've been around in hockey. A lot of times, some of these retired NHL players that are coaching youth teams or coaching their kids' team, right? And there's some of them that are awesome, and there are other of them that are terrible. And they set a bad example for kids, and they're on the refs all the time, and they're not coaching their kids the right way. And so Chad is somebody who you could not think of a more inspiring or compelling person for your kid to look up to in athletics than Chad Greenway. I mean, I just cannot overstate that. He is, yes, he's genuine. He's authentic. He's, from a small town in South Dakota, and he just embodies all of that, right? But he is such a tremendous example for young people. You can't go anywhere in Minnesota and find somebody who's going to say something negative about him. They have been incredibly involved in the Twin Cities community. They've given back tons and tons through his Lead the Way Foundation. They are just very philanthropic people, but just some of the most genuine, authentic, generous people you've ever met in your life. And so part of Chad's retirement gig, which is really why we got on this topic, was right? He started a spirit and seltzer company called Grey Duck. So the play on the words is that, and you don't really know this unless you're from Minnesota, so everywhere else they play Duck, Duck, Goose. Yeah, did you? You Googled it? Googled it for you? I did. So you have to. So in Minnesota they play.
Speaking of that, we have the power to do that while you're talking.
Let's do it. Duck, Duck, Grey Duck. So Grey Duck vodka, Grey Duck seltzers. So in everywhere else we play Duck, Duck, Goose. Up in Minnesota they play Duck, Duck, Grey Duck. And if you're not from Minnesota, you don't know that. And so people are like, gray duck, oh, that's clever. That's a play on gray goose or whatever. But no, it's actually really about having Minnesota roots. And so gray duck vodka was first, and the vodka's great. The vodka's spectacular. And then they really got into seltzers. There you go. Homegrown partner of the Vikings. So Minnesota Twins also have the Grey Duck Vodka Deck.
That's awesome. I didn't know that.
Yep. Target Field.
Yeah.
Yep. Is a Grey Duck Vodka Deck.
Hey, there he is.
And,
check him out. Look at him smiling. Look at him smiling, pouring drinks.
Yeah, I'd be smiling too. They have a vodka. They have a pour over drink. They got gear. Cool. It's a So it's been a neat thing to see him be something that he's passionate about, successful in, but also something that allows him to still be kind of infused in the Minnesota sports community. I mean, he's an icon up there. So I think someday he's I'm going to see his name and number in the Ring of Honor up there.
He's got to go in the Ring of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
No problem there. But he's got to have some outside contention for Hall of Fame. I mean,
I would think so.
11 years. I mean, multiple Pro Bowls.
Multiple Pro Bowls, same team, captain for a number of years. I mean, you think about
a pain in the ass to deal with as a Bears fan.
Right? Like, think about that. I mean, Tom Brady didn't play with one team his whole career. Peyton Manning didn't play with his own team. Like, which player in the modern era has played with the same team for their entire career?
Maybe like a left tackle or two or something.
Yeah,
some
maybe
Hall of Fame left tackles.
At the time when he missed his first game, he had the longest starting streak of any defensive player in the entire league at the time.
Yeah.
And that was late in his career. But yeah, he had a marvelous football career, and he's just an even better person than he was a football player.
Yeah, and according to their Instagram page, Jenny's Instagram page, they're raising quite some athletes over there too.
Oh, they are. Madden is
girl factory over there.
Oh, 100%. Madden is the arguably, what I would consider probably the top, if not one of the top women's basketball players in the nation. You can start playing high school varsity sports before high school in Minnesota. And I think she had 1,000 points before she was even,
that's crazy.
In high school. So she's, the same thing. Like she's a tremendous basketball player. She's a better kid even than she is a basketball player.
Proof of what you were talking about.
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
But
but also like
talking about
proof of like Jenny and Chad as parents, right? Like that kind of stuff doesn't just happen on its own. And, I mean, all their kids are awesome. I mean, but I think Madden's on the doorstep of a really special, basketball career in college, and certainly going to have opportunities after that too. But it's like I tell Gable all the time. Gable really wants to play Division I hockey. I'm like, listen, now this day and age, with how good these kids are, earlier and earlier and earlier, and younger, everybody's talented. Everyone's talented. Everyone is highly skilled. The things that separate you from everyone else are having good grades and being a good person. Period. Full stop. Be a good teammate, have good grades, be a good person, have strong character, and you're going to get lots and lots and lots of opportunities. You're going to get way more opportunities than the kid that's just highly talented. Yep. Because everybody's talented these days. I mean, the hitting coaches and the pitching coaches and Huddle and YouTube and golf instructors.
10 months a year, you're playing a sport over and over again. Indoor facilities everywhere.
That's what I was talking about.
Home equipment.
Yeah, no, we didn't have. I wasn't doing that when I was playing at the Gallowich YMCA basketball.
Yeah. You're lucky your dad put up a hoop.
For sure. Yeah, and if you had a hoop, in your driveway, everybody was coming to your house.
Yes.
You
were hooping with Nate Kren?
No, I was.
You were hooping with him?
I wasn't hooping with Nate. Nate Kren would have been dunking on me when I was
tall.
He was way too tall. But funny enough, before I came here, I told you I stopped down at Hey Hot Dog on Ruby Street.
It's so good still.
Oh man, there is nothing like a Hey Hot Dog.
And they're doing drive-through. They've been doing this like drive-through kind of model for the last how long?
Well, they started it during COVID
and all that.
Okay. So BJ Rulhofer, he's the owner over there. Okay, so BJ was there when me, my cousin TJ Gruber, and Nate Kren and Mike Hafner.
How many times is Gruber going to come up on this podcast?
Oh, man.
He's already got 2 or 3 episodes.
Here we go. Here we go. He's got to be your next guest. This is your reference podcast.
I'm going to have to get him on. Yeah.
You got to get him on. And so I said, so I pull up. It was weird. You know, it was like, it said open, but it didn't look like there was anybody in there. So I pull up and I see BJ come walking out. I haven't seen him in 30 years, right? And maybe 25 years. And so he comes out, and I was like, that's definitely him. I was like, BJ? And he was like, yeah. I was like, you don't remember me, but I used to sit at that stool over there when I was about 10 years old. And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I used to come up here with Nate Kren and TJ Gruber and Mike Hafner. He's like, really? And I go, yeah. He goes, when TJ first became a police officer, he's like, he stopped in here. He's like, I said, weren't you supposed to be like 12 years old? So anyway, so I'm chatting with BJ for a little bit. I said, I got to have a chili cheese dog like back in the day and a root beer. I said, can I take a picture with you? And he's like, no, absolutely not. He's like, if you took a picture of me, he's like, I'd break your phone. And I was like, but that's BJ's personality. He just wants to run Hey Hot Dog, and it is a Joliet staple, man.
And I don't know who the young lady is that works there, if she's related, if she's, she is awesome. I just want to.
I've never met her.
In case anybody listens to this and she somehow
gotta go to Hey Hot Dog.
Sometimes it hits her ears. Like, I want her to know that through the times where we were coming there during COVID and after and going through the drive-through, she is the most pleasant person to deal with. And you're still dealing with cash and
Oh yeah.
All that situation, but my kids are obsessed. Like when my kids were little, before they were in school, we never had daycare. We always relied on our mom and dad to take care of them. So her dad, my wife's father, would take them as they were, as one would go to school, then it would just be Joseph. And then when Joseph go to school, and now my nephew Philip is, he's not in preschool yet or whatever. So every Wednesday he'd have him, and he would take them to get root beer and sit at the bar and have a hot dog or two. And it was just like, it's really cool in 2018, 19, 20. My kids have a memory of a place that I had memories of when I was a kid.
I told BJ, I was like, my dad used to bring me up here, and from the time I could walk, I was sitting at one of those stools having an ice cold root beer.
I'd say it every time, dude. You can still get a keg of root beer for like $40 over there. You get like a 6-barrel of root beer.
Can you really?
Yeah, you can. He has it ready for you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because Joseph went to one of his friends' parties a few years ago, and I go up there, and the dad's got a tapper inside like an old like Pepsi cooler thing.
Come on.
I'm like, what do you got over there on tap? And he's like, it's root beer from Hey Hot Dog. I'm like, get out of here. Sure enough, you look on the menu.
No
it says
way.
it right on the menu. It says you can get a 6-barrel of root beer. I'm like, hell yeah.
I gotta get one of those for my dad. My dad's
school.
a big root beer fan, especially Hey Hot Dog.
Speaking of stuff from when we were kids and sharing it with our children, I mean, laces out, Dan.
Laces out.
That's happening right now.
Laces out, Dan.
That's the look on that shirt. That's a great shirt.
Laces out.
That's a great shirt. And I like the white, too, with the old school Miami colors.
Yeah, laces out, Dan. Finkel and Einhorn. Einhorn and Finkel.
Einhorn is Finkel.
Finkel is Einhorn.
What a great scene. Plunging in his face.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it still holds up. It still holds up.
Yeah.
It's still funny.
It's
still funny.
It is. I wonder, there's been some movies that we've been watching with our kids periodically where we're kind of like, are they going to think this is funny as we did?
I've had a few of those. Nervous watching it.
A lot of them have been crash and burns, honestly.
Yeah. Like, why is this funny again?
Yeah, I know.
And then I thought about
like, you're so old.
And I don't even want to say this on a podcast in case for fear of somebody but there's some I don't want to admit it, but I'm not like a huge Animal House fan. I feel like maybe that's what's happening.
For sure. I'm not either. I'm not either.
I don't go nuts for Caddyshack. I appreciate the movie. I think it's a funny movie, but I'm not give me Talladega Nights.
Yes.
Or old school or something, super bad.
Sure.
Those are like what I think is timeless classic at this point. But I did show Joseph Ricky Bobby Talladega Nights. He thought that was incredible.
That's awesome.
I had to make some strategic moves with Step Brothers to watch it, but man, did he think that was great. Like I had to do some timed out fast forwarding. Thank God I know the movie so well it didn't matter. I could just fast forward. What have you showed him that then
that Crash and Burned?
Yeah.
You know, the one that we didn't honestly recall was had the content necessarily that it did was Adventures in Babysitting.
Oh yeah,
we were like, oh, this is awesome! Oh, like this is an awesome movie. Yeah. We remember, and then we turn it on and we're watching it with the kids, and we're like, oh, this is definitely different than we remember it. So that was one recently that we were like, oh, that was probably, makes you think about some of the funny parenting audibles that you're like. Maybe that was a great idea. Maybe that wasn't. Yeah. Last year we were at, we took a Disney cruise, and then when we came back, we went to a couple of the Disney parks, and we went to Hollywood Studios. Maverick was 6, and he was talking the big game about wanting to go on Tower of Terror. And Gable, in his infinite wisdom at 13, was like, no, I'm not going on that. Okay. No thanks. And that's not for me. I'm okay, good. Your limitations can't be coaxed into something. That's a good, good quality to have.
Gotta convince me.
Yeah. And so Maverick's talking this big game, I want to go on that. I want to go on that. I'm like, okay. Now, I personally am not a fan of things that fall and fall rapidly.
Yeah. I'm 1,000% behind you on this thing. I'd never liked the Six Flags.
No. Giant drop. No.
We did Tower of Terror when, I don't know, in 2012.
Yeah.
It's me, her dad, her older cousin, Moose, and I remember coming off my seat. Having this much room between the seatbelt and my ass.
Oh, absolutely.
I was like, no, nope.
No. So I wasn't feeling this to begin with, but then I'm also going to be like, I'm going to take my 6-year-old's not going up there by himself. So we went up there, man, and we get off that ride, and this kid is looking he's not only speechless, but his eyes are bugging out of his head. He can't really say anything. And I was like, hey, what'd you think of that? And he was like, I didn't like that very much.
I didn't like that.
No, I didn't like that very much. And so then that night,
Joe,
that night he's trying to fall asleep. And he's waking up in the middle of the night panicking. And he's like, every time I close my eyes, I feel like I'm falling. And I was like, oh, I just felt like the worst parent ever. I was like, oh, that should have been I want an audible. I want a redo on that one.
But I mean, even think about the giant drop. Six Flags was a part of a lot of our youths here as we were, in our younger days in this area. But it's giant drop, you're seeing it. You're seeing where you're going.
Oh, 100%.
At least in Tower of Terror, I mean, I guess you're kind of but you're not really maybe I'm thinking of Haunted Mansion. Am I mixing those things up?
You're thinking of Giant Drop because
Tower of Terror.
Tower of Terror and Giant Drop
inside.
Yeah, in Tower of Terror you're inside, but what they do is they open up the thing.
That's
and
right.
It's completely dark. You shoot up to the top of the tower. Yeah. They open up the door. You see the entire park, and then they drop you.
Yes. I'm trying to think. I thought one felt more comforting, on your way up.
Yeah,
I don't. Giant Drop, you're just staring down at as you're clicking, click, 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 click.
I saw that ride get stuck one year. I was up there at.
Thanks, brother.
Old Six Flags.
Gurney
Old Six
finest.
Flags, Great America. Mm-hmm. Giant Drop, getting stuck.
So what's current state? What's current state Mike Fumagalli these days? What's he doing? I mean, he's got a 14 and 7-year-old.
And I have a daughter. I have a daughter.
Right, he's got a new blended family in the last how long?
2 years. 2 years.
2 years.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So my daughter is 10. She will turn 11 in December. Her name is Ella. And she's into lots of things too. She's into basketball, and right now she's in theater, so she's having theater practice. She's in dance, Girl Scouts. I mean, she's
busy.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's incredibly well-rounded.
Okay,
she's a good student in school, but passionate about theater, passionate about sports. She is incredibly loving and compassionate, and she's just she loves to spend time with me, which is a ton.
Really?
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah.
Love that.
I can't get enough of that. It's really neat there. So, you know, our daughter that we lost that was stillborn. You want to think about how crazy this would be. So Ella's birthday is December 7th, 2013. And Arrington's was December 22nd, 2013.
Oh, wow.
So
So close,
by the calendar
yeah.
year, they're about 2 weeks apart.
That's so close.
And so, you know, sometimes we talk about, you know, if Arrington had survived, you know, and her and Ella would be,
Right.
you know, pretty much like twin
right
sisters, right?
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse, right? But so I get to experience all these things as a girl dad that
It's got to blow your mind.
Dude,
It's got to blow your mind.
I never had an opportunity to do these things, right? And so like now I get to go to daddy-daughter dance. I get to go to I get to do things with her that I never would have been able to do. You know, of course I spend individual time with the boys, and we do, you know, we go on hockey trips or we go play mini golf, or, you know, I try to spend kind of some individual time with each of them. We both do. I think that's really important. But it's just, there are things that you know, she likes to go to Chuck E. Cheese, and so we both like Chuck E. Cheese pizza, and so we do, you know,
good.
it's great.
Yeah,
It's great
good.
pizza. You know, they sell it in the stores now.
No.
Yeah,
Are
they
you
do.
serious?
Yeah, like as a frozen pizza.
Charles E. Cheese's pizza is
Charles E.
available?
Cheese.
What?
Yeah, it's not like it. It's not. I haven't had the frozen
not the
kind,
same
but it's not the
probably.
same. As I guarantee,
How
it's not
could
the
it
same.
be?
How could you
How could it
replicate
be?
it?
Okay.
You know, it's like buying a Hey hot dog and a Jewel. That's not
Yeah.
not going to see that day anytime.
Not that you can't get the seasoning on the rollers the right way.
No
You
way.
know what I'm saying? The steaming of the bun.
Nope.
It's never going to be the same. Bag
Nope.
of chips on the side.
No.
You know what's funny about you and like my relationship? You and I knew each other, you know, at least through 2000, you know, like 99 or 98 through like 2000, you know, till forever, whatever. But I always remember you as like, I always picture you with Notre Dame things.
Yeah.
I always associate you with Notre Dame.
Yeah.
It's the weirdest thing.
I know.
matter
My
if-
brother went there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was so the reason that is because I was a huge Notre Dame fan because I love the movie Rudy. On
Right.
top of being from Joliet and my uncles and relatives being Joliet Catholic guys, I loved Rudy. So ended up meeting this really cool cat on our freshman football team who I became very good friends with, named Ryan McCarroll. And Ryan McCarroll also was a huge Notre Dame football fan and a huge Rudy fan. And so me and McCarroll used to like watch Rudy on like repeat.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were huge Notre Dame fans. And then my brother went there. And so I would get to go visit as like, I was in high school going to like Notre Dame games on the weekend and that kind of thing.
No big deal.
No, I mean it was that was really neat. So I was a huge Notre Dame fan until, you know, obviously they didn't let me in, and then and then I started rooting for Michigan.
Now I hate them. That's funny.
That was the day I became a Michigan fan.
It's funny that you brought up Ryan too, because Ryan, you know, Ryan's the reason that my son Joseph isn't Joseph Kyle like me. He's Joseph Ryan Bobby, because we were all so close with Ryan McCarroll, and my wife especially.
Of course,
most of her high school adult life, and then you know, we would go to the golf outing every year for his family. I mean, he's got the best family ever.
Oh yeah,
and they're amazing. We still see his sisters so often, you know, everywhere and in the teaching world around the area and all that. So, I mean, he played a huge role in our relationship. Even, you know, we've been together. It'll be 15 years in October. But
wow,
I mean, you look in the refrigerator outside and all that, you'll see the big 11 Shamrock magnets everywhere. Like Ryan was a huge thing. It's kind of funny now that you mention it, because you guys do. Like I always think of number 11. You know, in the three leaf Shamrock, and you guys were both hyperly upper body jack dudes with pasty white chests.
Yes,
freckles
and lots of freckles. We shared pasty white skin, freckles, and hitting the weights.
What a dynamic, amazing human being that guy was. I mean, what a terrible thing to have not gotten to see him at age 40. You know, with kids and stuff. He would have been ridiculous.
Just the dad of dads, man, coaching all his kids' teams.
Him and Mike Gerhardt taught me how to play euchre. I mean, like, they were like, they were the best, and Ryan just like it's he sounded like with his nieces and stuff before.
Oh, sure.
It's like it just couldn't imagine how cool it would have been to have him.
You saw him as I think about him a lot of times with the age gap between Gable and Maverick. I think about him as a big brother, and I think about it a lot. And Morgan posted that, that video she posts every year, when the anniversary comes up, and I see those pictures of him, and I think about my own kids. I think about what life would be like with him. I think about him as an adult. I think about, how our friendship would have prevailed over the years. Like you and I were good friends in high school, and then we haven't talked a lot, over the years. And you think about how that just would have manifested itself over the years. What a awesome family, and man, I love that dude.
Yeah,
really impactful.
One of the best things that I get to see all the time is Shannon's sister actually keeps it. I think we may have a copy of it too, but Shannon's sister keeps it, and there's a picture of he and I when Elizabeth, Shannon's younger sister, was in junior high or whatever. We were over at their house the one day, and her mom was getting rid of a bunch of Elizabeth's old dance things, and he and I decided to put on the leotards. And we've got this great picture of the two of us with just flexing, bent over, just with our leotards on. It's hilarious.
I love it.
It comes out every time everybody gets reminiscent about something. But that dude was an absolute legend.
He was, always will be.
So I sidetracked us a little bit. I mean, so what else? What's going on besides dad now? Now you get to do girl dad stuff too.
Yep.
You're getting like some of the best of both worlds situations happening now.
I spend a lot of time with my kids. I joke around that my real job starts at 3:30 in the afternoon, which is typically, the case.
Do you learn cool like young guy slang from the 14-year-old? Do you have to learn stuff?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Not.
Do you say it wrong usually?
All the
like
time.
We say it wrong.
All the time. I'm not that in the know. Like I'm in the know enough to be in the know, but I'm also in kind of the high school environment.
Yes,
all the time. So
I'm always absorbing it.
Yeah, I usually have a pretty good pulse on it. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, during the day, I'm a district administrator at Glen Bard. I see kind of different things in the schools, and I deploy some technology so all of our students are they're one-to-one with iPads. So we have 8,000 kids, and all of them carry an iPad.
That's wild.
And their iPad is essentially customized for them. So like when a student doesn't have access to all of the textbooks that we own on their iPad, they have access to the textbooks that they need on their iPad. And so I negotiate the contracts that purchase those products, and then I deploy the technology that that helps to deliver those materials to those students. And then I also support I do a lot of teacher workshops. So we support professional learning of our teachers during the school day. And so our teachers can get a sub and come to workshops that we do in-house. And so I teach a lot of those. I started a consulting business last year, really formally, but I've been doing a lot of speaking and workshops kind of in the science education space for a while. So I kind of, we were talking about earlier, science was like the thing that I could teach the fastest with, but then I really enjoyed it. And I really,
locked into it on accident.
I know.
You had the easy money.
I did. And so when I did that, I really kind of fell in love with, I just fell in love with teaching, and I also wanted to share that with other people. And so I started doing a lot more. I got kind of invited and involved into, some different groups across the nation over the years. I was traveling a lot. I was doing a lot of workshops, conferences that they bring teachers to. I would speak at the conference or do a workshop at the conference, something like that. And that really created a lot of other opportunity for me. And I then I was a high school dean when Kirsten got sick. In January of that year, I had just accepted a principal job at a middle school. So I accepted the job in January. She got sick in February, died in March. I started the new job in July.
What a like your timeline is insane,
dude. So I got kind of launched into this, right? The principalship, and right now I have a lot of, I have quite a bit of margin outside of the workday. So when I was a principal, you had to be at everything, right?
Yeah.
So like you got basketball game this night, volleyball game the next night, PTA meeting the night after that, Rotary Club the night after, there's like, you got to be at something. And so I wasn't home a lot, and I was a newly single parent with 2 young kids, one of whom was 8 years old, and saying like, Dad, like I just lost my mom. Like you're never around either, And so, so my job now, it's really intense from, say 7 to 3:30. But outside of that, I have a pretty, I only have to work late at night sometimes, not all the time. And it's usually when I'm catching up, and, I don't have to be at every board meeting. So
figured out, I hope, a good work-life balance. Then it sounds like, that's the hot thing, right? Work-life balance. Everybody talks about work-life balance.
Yeah.
Sometimes I don't know if it exists, but
I know.
But
I think both are imbalanced at different times. The home life is imbalanced at times, where like we're running. My wife and I are like ships passing in the night sometimes.
You
taking one
today.
kid here, one kid. Yeah. See you later. Yeah. See you at 10:30 tonight.
Bye.
Yeah. So, but no, she's a great partner in all of the craziness. And you also got to think too, like our kids are pretty unique ages right now, right? So like there's a season
different flavor everywhere.
Yeah, there's a season of life where you're like driving your kids around all over the place, and then there's a season of life where they start driving themselves some places, and people are like, "Oh, you're gonna miss this." I'm like, "I'm not gonna miss this. I'm not." No. I'm not gonna miss
as long
this.
as he doesn't drive like an idiot.
Yeah. No, I'm gonna miss them being young and cute and going to all their things. Like I'll miss that part, but like I won't miss the chaos of like, exactly, right? Like I just won't miss the chaos of all the moving pieces all the time.
But you guys sound like you have a lot. You guys seem like we're pretty lucky.
We're cooking.
We keep it kind of tight. We got baseball, a little flag football, a little cross country now for Addison. We're pretty light. We're perspective people. We like to step back and like, well, at least we're not them.
I wish I had that sometimes, because like I'm much more inclined to, Gable's in football and hockey right now, which are 2 pretty intense, time-consuming sports.
So much.
Maverick's in football and playing piano. Ella's in theater, and then she has her other things that she's involved in too. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're, but like, I was like, hey,
you might be nuts.
Yeah,
be crazy.
I know, just a little bit. But also at the same time, I was like, hey, I'm gonna go do this podcast for like a few hours tonight. Are you okay? Are you okay with that? And she's like, yeah.
Tell her I apologize. She's never even met me.
No.
What's this dipshit? He's got 50 followers, and he's gonna drag you out for 3 hours of our valuable time. I'm so sorry.
No, she's awesome. She's supportive. She's a good sport. She's a good teammate.
You know what, dude? You do have this big story to tell, and you're a storyteller, I think, as well alongside of that. And I think it was definitely worthwhile to get you to come up here and talk a little bit about what you do. Man, you have this like positivity about you. And as I got older, and as I started to kind of find myself as a human being and an adult, it was just like, I always found myself gravitating towards these people, whether it be podcasts, I think people that I have books and whatever it is, TV, documentaries. Like I always just always identify with this kind of mentality of the positive side of things, and
mindset is everything, man.
Yeah,
mindset is everything.
I was piecing together what has been going on in your life over the years through sporadic Facebook posts and things like that, and I was almost happy I didn't really know much a detail or anything, because when we got the bulb to do this, I was like, this is going to be so much more authentic to talk to you and actually listen to, and let you just kind of free flow thoughts, you know, because I didn't want to know everything. I hate to know what I'm going to ask somebody.
Yeah,
I don't
of
know if
course.
that
No,
does
that's
that
the
make
way.
sense?
Yeah, it's the way it flows the best. It's the way it flows the best. I was, you know, I was in the same boat too. I was kind of, in one sense, I was trying to think about like, what are some of the things that I could talk about? What are some of the things I could share, or what's the best way to share those things? And then I was also like, no, you know what? I'm just gonna sit down and talk to my friend for a little while and catch up and see how that goes.
And just like through the feeling of the messages we were shooting back and forth, planning this out, I was like, oh my God, he's got the mentality and the mindset of what I'm looking for. Like, you just had that same energy of like this is gonna be exciting. This is gonna be fun.
I've always wanted to do something like this. You know, it was too.
I love this stuff. You know, I love listening to it. I love being a host of it, whatever you want to call it. Like I am so about hearing people's stories. It doesn't matter if you make knives or teach kids or you're an expert on fucking flint. I don't care. Like if you're passionate about it and you can explain it to me, I'm down. I'm here to listen. So
I love this, man. This is all. Thanks for having me.
And we're like 2.5 hours in, and I probably got about 9 more hours in me if I want.
All right, let's go.
But it's like we can just mess with people and say like, who can make it to 2 hours and 30 minutes, 3 hours? Let's just start talking about high school friends. I mean, so who do you still talk to? Man,
Here's what's funny. Okay, so actually, Derek Snickeris came to Gable's hockey game last weekend. So I saw him.
Dude, Derek was an insane hockey player.
Oh yeah,
so good.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that a lot.
You know who else was? Bob Porter. Bob
Porter was a stud too.
I
remember that.
Stein was good hockey player too.
Yes.
Jaguars, but Derek was like a world class.
He was a stud.
He was a really good hockey player.
So I still talk to him. But so tell you a funny story quickly about this. But so I was sitting in my office a couple of months ago, and I got a phone call from an administrator at Joliet West High School. And she was calling on a reference check for a teacher that had taught for me when I was, previously. I don't remember what school it was at, but I was the reference check. And she said, what can you tell me about the person? So this is a fabulous teacher, somebody I had a great experience with, so I was able to give, a glowing recommendation. And she said something to the effect of like, I was talking about Joliet kind of as if I knew it, right? So I was talking about the school and I was talking about the community, and she kind of like led on to the fact that I might have some knowledge. And she said, are you from here? I said, I'm an alumni.
Yeah, baby.
And gladly. Yeah. And so, and she's like, oh, really? And I was like, yeah. I was like, you guys should have like an alumni hall of fame. Like the amount of people that have graduated around our time period or with us have accomplished some incredibly, and have met, Roger Powell is the head basketball coach at Valpo.
Raj. Killing it.
I mean, Amit Sood is one of the most well-respected and well-renowned orthopedic surgeons in the East Coast.
Audit's going to be on the podcast eventually.
He's coming on.
We're booking it.
Right.
Yeah, we just talked yesterday a little bit.
I mean, Colleen Schuster is a federal district court judge appointed by the President of the United States in a lifetime position in Springfield. I mean, there have been people that in and around our grades and ages. My brother was valedictorian. He's a senior executive at NBC Studios in New York. Like, I mean, there are people that have accomplished incredible things that walk the same halls as some of these kids. And so I said, this is like my shameless plug for like to induct my friends into this thing. But like your students could hear compelling and powerful stories about other people that had the same locker where they did, that lived on the same street that they did, and they accomplished what they have. And I mean, Colleen was a federally appointed district judge before 40 years old.
Can you book her?
Maybe. No. She's got to bring Secret Service with her.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I met her for coffee in Springfield, and she had to have somebody walking her to and from everywhere.
That's impressive. I like that. Yeah. I like that a lot.
But the point being is that
shout out Colleen Schuster.
that there have been, Joliet has its reputation for certain things, and but one of them should be that a lot of really successful, inspiring people have walked the halls of that school and have accomplished a lot. You
guys had a really good class too. I mean, I love my
did.
class. Don't get me wrong. I love my boys, and my gals over there. But I mean, you guys had like great people. I mean, Andrew Rubeck, Chris Bronson.
Sure.
Like all these folks. Like you mentioned, Roger. I mean, I was in the 8th grade program, coming to West for freshman math, in Algebra 1 and like Miss Diaz's class or something. I don't remember, but I remember Roger was in that class. And he was a freshman. I was in 8th grade, and I'm just watching this giant man try to break down something on a chalkboard. And now I'm watching him, Instagram. Even in my class, Aaron Hodges, Aaron, on Alabama staff at this point. He was with TCU when they went to the national championship. Just incredible folks that we had surrounding us.
No doubt. It's Joliet has its it has its reputations, not just for Blues Brothers and those kinds of things, but people have achieved great success. Yeah. That's us.
That's us. Baby.
Good movies, though. Good movies.
Yeah. And you get to bring that flavor to Batavia. Huh?
Yeah,
that's great.
That's right. Yeah.
So, dude, anything else you want to cover? Like, I mean, have you been doing any other wild shit that people should know about?
No, I mean, we've kind of covered it. I mean, I'm between, being dad to 3 kids and running around all over the place. Clear Ribbon Foundation keeps me busy outside of work. It's life has taken us to one of the reasons I was excited about doing this was just being able to reminisce a little bit and share a little bit about what the path our lives have taken since the last time that we got to see each other, but also to try and tell some compelling stories about how our adult life has shaped us, and I think that's been the best part about it, and I was also able to bring some home cut donuts, so I hope that
dude, all the classic spots.
Yeah, I had to hit Hey Hot Dog, home cut donuts.
It is nice, like being around here. Like I always definitely thought to myself, like, oh yeah, you'll probably leave. Like I was never like, oh, I gotta get out of this town kind of guy. But like I always thought, like, yeah, you probably like work in the city for a while, do whatever. But like, it's nice. Raising my kids here has been nice. We
it's
had
good,
13,
man.
11, and now we have a 3-year-old too. It's like
Will they go to West? Will your oldest?
Right now,
yeah.
Well, okay. Financially, they have to go to West.
Yeah.
At this point, it's like, they have to go to West. At this point, I think my daughter doesn't. She likes the fact because they went to St. Paul's early most of their time because Shannon taught there for years, and then Shannon moved to New Lenox teaching in a public school, and then we moved.
Is she still teaching now?
No, she stopped teaching like right after we had JJ.
Okay.
Because she was, I think, 16 years in, and she was just this is my shot here.
Yeah.
And I was like,
For
you know
sure.
what? Do it. I was like, just do it. So the first year, she kind of just did a little bit like on the side type stuff, but then this past couple of years, her best friend, and you would probably know them, the Grohars. They run a daycare out of the house. So Shannon's been working with Megan for the last couple of years, and then she subs a couple times a week at the Troy.
Nice.
She kind of just sticks to one school, but she loves the.
So that gives her some margin to be able
JJ
to.
gets to go to the daycare with her, so
of course.
You get a 3-year-old with you, and then when he goes into preschool, she'll go back to work if she wants to.
That's awesome.
She's never been happier.
That's awesome.
I hate to say that to a person who works in education.
It's a goal.
But it's like she's never been.
Dude,
happier.
it's a tough gig right now, man. It's a really tough gig.
A lot of things changed. Obviously, we all went through.
Sure.
We all went through that whole thing together. That whole pandemic situation. Everybody's got their story of like, oh yeah, when the pandemic hit. Dot.
For sure. Fill in the blank.
I was ripping off podcasts 3 times a week, traveling to breweries. And then it all stopped then, and then I was like, oh, I'll do like Zooms. I hated that, like no personal connection. I hated it so much, and then it was like I started working in the industry. I was doing a hobby podcast like I stopped working in corporate America, went to craft beer and worked for like these small places, and I loved it, and but then the podcast kind of died. Like the
Yeah.
hobby kind of died because I was too close. I was too
Sure.
involved. It wasn't authentic anymore because I wasn't,
Sure.
I had a stake in it. It felt like,
Yeah, yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what this is now.
Shifted
It's
from
like
hobby to
I
job. Yeah, yeah.
finally like just found like I'm gonna do this again some way somehow.
Yeah.
And adding the video element obviously has been a new venture, but
This is
so
awesome. I mean, this is a great dude. This is a high tech setup.
It's fun. I
and
work
it's
right there every day. That's my workstation.
That's
so
awesome.
I'm there 5 days a week working my normal job, and then I get to do this now at night.
Well, Average Joe's is going to be hopefully a reference destination podcast.
Shout out to John Horn.
John Horn for the artwork,
yeah, the
and
best.
yeah, man, Average Joe's podcast. Hopefully with above average guests and
always.
above average beers.
That used to be with the beer one was the above average. People are like, yeah, that name is way too long. I'm like, I know, but it's fine. And he's like, well, you got to monetize. I'm like, I'm not monetized. If it monetizes one day, that's great. Like, this is fun. This is like I'm all about these conversations with people. So that's all this is. But yeah, I mean, again, I can't thank you enough for coming and doing the show, man.
Dude,
I knew you'd
Joe,
be great.
thanks, man.
You didn't disappoint. You never
Sorry, I lost
do.
my train of thought a couple of times.
Well, we got there though. So it only took us 3 times.
I landed there.
Did we lose any? Did we forget any shout outs? I mean, we're Joliet boys sitting here. We're Joliet West finest.
I know,
We got
man.
a shout out to like Millsaps, dude. Millsaps was like a student teacher. I feel like when I was there. And now he's like running the athletic programs and whatnot.
You know, Shad Hallahan is a principal at Joliet Central. I was good friends with Adam. Adam played a lot. We played a lot of baseball at St. Joe's growing up. And they were a great Joliet family. It's fun. It's fun to think about. It's just fun to kind of, go through the Rolodex, the Joliet Rolodex.
Even now, I want to have on. What's his name? Coach Fitz, the baseball coach over at Central. I want to because he runs camps and stuff. During the off season, and Joseph takes him, and Joseph loves him.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like the first time we went to his camp when Joseph was probably 7-8 years old or whatever, he made a comment that like the first day of camp about something about like in one of the hats, like Mike Lara's teaching like them in the cages. He said something about one of it was just a royal blue hat with the yellow JC on the front of it. And Joseph said something. The next week we showed up to camp on Sunday and he had one waiting for Joseph. He's like, yeah, I went in the shed and found some. I'm like, dude, how fucking cool is that?
That's awesome.
That's so nice. But then he ended up helping out last year. Joseph joined a team, Dynasty Travel League. And he conducted a lot of the.
Is that based out of Joliet? Or?
Yeah, it's in Shorewood right here.
Okay, yeah.
On Earl Road here.
Yeah.
But they use JJC's indoor facility to train. They give it to us like 2 days a week for his training, and Fitz ran all those practices. And
Got it.
Like, just so good with the kids. Like, he's incredible.
Those are people you want your kids around. Yeah,
he's smart. He's tough. He's not like treating them like you're 9 or you're 10 or you're 11.
Yeah.
He's like, you're gonna look at me, you're gonna listen to me, but I'm not gonna be a dick.
Yeah,
like he's a really nice guy, and they all respect him.
But I'm gonna coach you like a ball player.
Yeah, they all respect it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, go figure. Me yelling at him mindlessly isn't really helping him. That guy talking to him the right way.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, he enjoys going to practice better.
That's funny, man. One of the arts I think of parenting young athletes is in the sense of like. You just want to put your kids around other people that are going to speak into their lives in a positive way, hopefully say some of the same things that you're saying. But then you find them like listening to these other people like, oh, my coach said this. And I'm like, oh, I've been saying that for years. I'm glad your coach finally said it. And then it all just percolated.
That's real.
Yeah. So you got to have your kids around people that coaches that have compelling messages to, that are going to inspire them and hopefully make a difference in their lives. That's your kind of responsibility as the parent,
Yep. He's got a flag football coach right now that he's really drawn to. He really loves this guy. And he respects when he sees like size and intelligence. And he's like, Dad, he played for Eastern Illinois when he was young. Like that means something.
It's a
to
big
him.
deal for them. Yeah.
So he like listens. He's like, Dad, we have wristbands, and he's calling out colors and college names, and that's the play. And we're, he's like really starting to buy into this whole thing. He's like, last year it was like just kind of written on a whiteboard and shown me like as the play's happening. He's like, now I have a book to look at. And I'm like, wow. So you know what? Let's end with this because not directly related to coaching, but you know, we're 40 now. We're 40 plus now, right? So you were always, you know, and me too at the time, but we were always in good shape. Like, how did you maintain over the years? You're clearly not 450 pounds, so like you're taking like, how you taking care of yourself these days? Is it you work out at the school in the mornings and stuff? Are you running? Are you like hitting the weight still?
When I was coaching wrestling, I was, you know, hitting, you know, 2-3 workouts a day because I was training with the kids every day, and then I would also get my own in every day. So when I was coaching wrestling, that was probably at the peak of my adult fitness, I would say. Especially COVID and post-COVID, it's been a Peloton.
You're a Peloton guy.
I'm a Peloton guy.
I've never heard a bad Peloton story. To be honest, I've heard it turns into a coat rack sometimes, but
not mine.
But I have never heard of like a you know.
I will say this, that so I bought one, I think in like the first week of April in 2020, and I got it delivered in like 6 days. If you bought it in like the end of April, it took 8 months to like get your bike.
It's like buying a Tesla or something.
Yeah,
we'll deliver
exactly.
it in 9 months.
Yeah. So that, honestly, man, like I got addicted to the results of that. I mean, you talk about, you know, going back to our first story about being addicted to results.
We're full circle, baby.
You know,
we're doing we're doing really good.
We just arrived.
We're good at this.
So that was the thing, honestly, man, that just kept me going. And I'll tell you this. I mean, you talk about, you know, I was, you know, somewhat joking that I have a therapist, but not. But my ability to manage and regulate my emotions is directly related to my ability to have physical activity. And so, like, if I'm starting to feel tense and on edge, more likely to be impulsive, more likely to react with my first reaction, then I know I just got to get a workout in. I got to shower, and that's my kind of like decompression.
You're out running demons is what you're doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I listen to Rogan all the time. Rogan cracks me up, but that's always his thing.
That's
right?
it.
Like, I would lose my shit if I didn't.
100%.
You know,
100%.
See, I always, you know, you tend to try to relate to that, right?
Yep.
As a human being, I'm always like put myself in those shoes. Like, I have found a better tie-in description is what you said versus like I'm out running something. Or, you know, like that. But what you said makes a lot more sense to me and how I feel when I do, like, you know, I get on a bike or a treadmill or go somewhere, you know, go outside and run.
Sure.
It's that point, and I never used to be able to recognize it. That I needed it. You know, I never used to, and now I'm starting to get a better, like, oh yeah, this is clearly A to B. This is clearly tied together, that
100%.
You were feeling this anxiety and you were feeling this thing, and then you did that, and now all of a sudden you're breathing a little bit easier,
for sure,
a little bit more less stressed out about the next meeting, or
for sure. You just, I mean, there's a physiological, obviously, you know, most doctors will tell you exercise is good for you, but there's a biochemical, neurological factor that's involved and that's happening while you're exercising, and that's just I can't, like, that's the most therapeutic thing, I think, for me. And when I start to go, you know, a few days when I've just been running the kids around, or I'm running ragged, or I'm really busy at work and I'm working, you know, I'm trying to pick up slack and I'm driving, you know, to and from 4 practices, and then I'm also having to work late, you know,
not to do it.
Yeah, all those things. And a couple of days get away from you, and man, you start feeling it real quick, you know? Yeah. So it's a good way to kind of regulate, and we have a space to do it downstairs. Put a wrestling mat down there for Maverick last year, so we also can, you know, get down there and scrap it out a little bit too.
A little something for him.
A little something.
Dad hasn't lost a step yet. He's still got his fastball.
Oh, absolutely.
His fastball.
That's right.
You'd be eating that mat, kid.
That's right. Pinned a $100 bill up on the wall. Said anybody that comes in here takes me down gets a $100 bill. So
there you go, boys.
Yeah,
come on in. Bring that broccoli over.
Step it up.
All right, dude. Let's cut it. You got to get home. I mean, we probably have to do a part 2. That's
right.
what's going through my head.
All right,
now.
I'm down with part 2 for sure.
We'll do a part 2 at some point, right?
Yeah, I love it.
We'll let it breathe, have some more life experiences, and we'll come back and sit down in front of these here microphones, maybe with some futuristic White Claws. Who knows?
I love it. Appreciate it, Joe. It's been special, man. Thanks so much for having me.
It was awesome. It's therapeutic for me. Hopefully, it is for the guest. But
definitely,
man, I love hearing this stuff. I love talking through everything and just hearing how people got to be the way they are.
Yeah,
you know
for sure.
I
mean,
love it. Anything else before we clip it? I don't want to.
No, I'm gonna like, share, subscribe. All those kinds of things.
What a professional!
Plug it.
Professional.
Plug
right
it.
Yeah, plug it. Plug it. I'm angling for the launch of the Gray Duck.
Seltzer. Yeah. Gray Duck, Illinois.
Come on.
Gray Duck, Illinois.
Right.
Next time you see Gray Duck vodka, Gray Duck seltzer.
I don't even care if I'm going to advertise it anyway.
Yeah.
They don't have to.
I should have brought them. I'll bring them next time. Part 2. I'll bring them for next time.
I'll have to keep up with them and see when they're going to launch. So I'm going to stick it at. I'm going to pretend that it's like a sponsor.
There you go.
Like, hey, brought to you by Gray Duck. All right, dude. Well, it was a goddamn pleasure to hang out with you.
Yeah, you too, buddy.
Very, very cool. I can't wait to keep up with you now that we've been talking more. We'll be texting back and forth here as we go.
Absolutely.
Mike Fumagalli, ladies and gentlemen. Mike Fumagalli.
Joe Bobby.
All right, boys.
Average Joes.
All right, dude. We'll talk to you. Thanks, man.
Love you, brother.